Bum 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 ba ba bum bum. Yada da da dum bum 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 bum. Yum bum 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 ba da da dee. Da 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 dum 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 bum bum. Hello. Hello. How are we all doing? Hope you're enjoying life. Hello Night 6 everyone, hello Byron Newman, hello Karma Gusberg, hello Micah Cooch, hello John Shea, hello Peter Dawson, hello Stephen Richardson, hello ZGB40. Hello everyone, how are you all doing today? Hello Amelia! Hello Matcha Dustle. Hello Felix, Senecanero, hello! Good day. So, how are you all doing this evening? You all well? Sorry I'm running a little bit late, but it was a comfort break scenario. Hello David, hello John South. So first off, I need to say thank you everyone for all your support. Thank you for turning up this evening. Hope you enjoyed tonight's video. Hello DeBrock and hello Right Sublet. And hello everyone. It's been a fun day. I'm currently both ahead and behind on recordings. So, hello Michael Anderson. Hello everyone. So, there's interesting things pointing out. Interesting questions from before we start. If you have seen the Julian Corbett video, which came out on Tuesday, there is a question at the end. Now, I phrased that question as, what do you think happens in a world in which the Royal Navy decide to max out dreadnoughts from the beginning? They just literally go all in straight away. And the British government backs them up and pays for it. Now, that question was phrased specifically. It was phrased the way it was to hopefully generate a discussion about why they didn't. Because there are reasons not to. A, there's turbine production. How many turbines are you producing at that time? What quality are they at? B, turret production. If you're suddenly going from where you had two 12-inch turrets, pretty much per battleship, to 5 per battleship, well, that's an increased requirement, especially if you're building, let's say, 12 battleships. You're suddenly going up from needing to build, say you built 12 with 2, that's 24 turrets, to build, and they're requiring 60 turrets. That's a big jump. There are lots of reasons for them not to do what they did and not to do that. There are benefits if they do. There are, let's be honest. It finishes off the German naval race in 1906. There is no way the German Navy is catching up that. Because yes, you have restarted the world by pushing it down to dreadnoughts, so you've shifted everyone down to what matters is how many dreadnoughts you have, not how many battleships you have. But you've also immediately gone, right then, we've built 12 of these. What has anyone else got? Everyone's got 0. Oh, that's a shame. Next year, by the way, we're building another 12 next year. What have you all got? Still 0? Oh, that's a shame. Pouring milk down myself. Very skillful. But, you know, that's a way of deterrence. And you can go, well, you know, the USA could match it. Could the USA match it in 1905? Do they have the yards? Do they have the production facilities of all the necessary armaments, armour and engines to match it in 1905? They don't. They'd have to invest and build those things before they could match it. And by that point, Britain would probably be on its next generation. Because let's be honest, you probably get through generations. If you're building 12 and 12, you'd probably be on your next generation by 1907, 1908. It's basically the Royal Navy just going spam world. But even the Royal Navy, with the British maritime infrastructure, which was as massive as it was, couldn't do that. And it's in discussion points. That's what these questions are usually. They're usually discussion point questions. They're for you to think about. Now, nice one. I bet the RN Bearn is the Hawkins class heavy cruisers. No, it's not the Hawkins class. Believe it or not, I did consider the Hawkins class, but I didn't even make the top 3 in the end. Theoretically, the top 4, but there's one which is a notable mention, which came up from about 6. Now, there was also the question with this video as to whether or not other navies did actually have a Bearn equivalent. And I had to define what a Bearn equivalent was. That's an interesting topic to get into. What is the Bearn? What is the problem with the Bearn? Is it the absolute worst shit? Well, it's not. It's a ship which is it's a ship where its design actively, the efforts to design it as best they can actively impede it doing its function, and I'll be explaining that in the beginning of the video. Anyway, start off with shameless book plug. No, seriously, if you weren't buying books, if you weren't supporting the channel, if you weren't doing what you're doing on Patreon or supporting Shipshape down below, I wouldn't be able to do any of this. Certainly wouldn't be off to Australia. So thank you very much. I will say that every time I think about Australia at the moment, I'm still seeing the large amount of money which went out of my account over a week or so ago, booking tickets, etc. Now, that was a lot of money. It feels like a week or so ago. It wasn't a week or so ago. It was bank holiday. So it was the 8th. Just let me recover myself. I have, as I've told you before, my family heritage is Scottish and Cornish. Neither side does well with spending money. I'm better now. Okay. Alright. That was a lot of money. And it's... a lot of money has gone through my credit card. Because that's how you sort of have to run it through things. Everything's had to be booked up through on the credit card because I had to pay off the credit card. Well, as I explained before, as historians, and I've now explained this in multiple videos, so I'm going to leave it in that one, but I explained it very times. We run it through, we run our lives through our credit cards. And, yeah. It's okay. It's okay. Fine. So, hello. Ooh, Kamchatka came up. No, I haven't done the Russians in this one. Turrets from Scrap Sovereigns? No, that's not. They're not good enough turrets. No, sorry, you saw my rant, didn't you? I have seen your long comment, but it's not necessarily a rant. Look. Thank you, Michael Coach. I'd say, there's the Oz Fund. There's also the much-needed Iron Brew Fund at the moment. I won't show you all, but the Iron Brew is currently down to 3 cans. So, yes, more has been ordered. More has been ordered. And I am... random question for everyone to think about, and this is a random question, but it's something which I would love some comments from people. Do you think because when I went to Canada, my headphones broke on the flight out. Do you think headphones are a sensible investment for going to Australia? Because I'm not sure. Says the man who's currently spending £20 on Iron Brew as we speak. That does sound a lot of money, but that buys me 36 cans of 12 of 1901 and 24 of regular Iron Brew. Let me check that's going through on the right card. Yeah. That's something. I still think you should have made Outriggers and Two Runaways on the Tumble Home for Bearn. No, Bearn is bad enough as it is without them adding any more issues onto it. You stole the free headphones you were given on the plane to Australia last time. Yeah, the trouble is, the headphones I got given on WestJet when I was on them, and WestJet were very, very nice, but the headphones they had were absolutely terrible and gave me earache. So I was using my own ones. Yeah, mine is a little more than 12 hours. I'm on, let me just check. My flight to Australia, and I'm happy to share these details. Actually, let me just do this, because that's just easier. I have an image, which I can share with you all. He says, if I can find it. If I can find it. Austria. There you go. This is the Australia trip. As we speak at the moment. And my trip to lovely Australia starts off with a flight aboard on Singapore Airlines, and just loading up my tickets now as we speak. So I depart, let's see, I have a 13 hours flying between the UK and Singapore, and then from Singapore I have then a further 5 hours flying to Perth. So I will have 18 hours flying time on the way out, and on the way back, well, I have 5.5 hours flying from Perth to Singapore, and then I have only an hour, but then I get on the 13.5-hour flight to London. So, yes. It's gonna be a fun trip. It's gonna be a lot of interesting history. And as you can see, we've already put in ideas for dinners and dates down for dinners. But we do need, as with Canada, people's suggestions and preferably somewhat people to volunteer to help organise it. So, you know, that's going to be that's the requirement I've now got to get on. Is I've now got to finish making sure all the museums are all happy, everything's okay with the museums, all the insurances and all their stuff are agreed, and then I have to sort out all the people who are going to take the lead in organising the dinners, and then give you all the details and see if there's any historical societies which would like to have us come and talk and all those things. It's going to be fun. John South, I flew Cathay Pacific. Cool. Actually, also, I think that headphones are nice to have, depending on how much time you're going to spend interacting with people. I prefer on flights to not interact with people. I'm not an antisocial person. If you chat to me, I will be polite back. But I'm not on a flight to have a full conversation. I'm not my aunt. Okay, I love my aunt dearly, but she actually specifically likes to get the middle seat in a row so she can talk to people and make new friends on a plane. I am not that person under any circumstances. And I will say this now, if you have met my aunt in the air, I do apologize. Nothing, I take no responsibility for it, but I apologize. I love her dearly, she's wonderful, but yeah. My gosh, as you know, seems like 18 hours of work on next book. That's pretty much my idea, but that's also the reason why I'm going to, when it's about 48 hours before the flight, I'm going to look into seeing if I can upgrade to business class. That's principally because of the desk and space you get on Singapore Airlines in business class for putting your laptop on and working on. Because if I'm going to be working for those 18 hours, I might as well be comfortable in a working position while doing it. But I'm going to see how much it costs to upgrade. I've seen the upgrade being as low as £200, and if I have got the money at the end of the month, because it will be, let's be honest, it will be after payday. So if I have been paid, it would be sensible for me, for at least, especially on the, probably not on the flights to America, the flights from Singapore to Australia. I won't bother those, but the flights to Singapore, etc., and from the UK to Singapore, etc. That's 13 hours. It would seem sensible to be in a more comfortable position for writing. Right then. So, the Bearn. Okay. Let's... Look, someone the other day said to me that the reason for the Graf Zeppelin being the shape it was is because it is the German version of the Bearn, and they've decided the Bearn is actually a good carrier. And you have to wonder, under what circumstance do you decide that the Bearn is the best carrier in the world to copy? What possessed you? Because, honestly, you can just see in this image, and this is why I use this image, despite it being a CGI artistic image rather than an actual ship image, you actually have that lift. And that just shows one of the problems with it. Because let's think about that lift from its point of view of, okay, so you've now got to, if your aircraft are going to be moving anywhere, you've got to tuck them inside that lift. When it goes down, yes, that's a completely flat surface for it to go over, but you've also got all that structure on the lift. So you can now only put aircraft on forwards to backwards or backwards to forwards. You can't slot the aircraft in from the side. Your manoeuvring room is completely blocked down in your hangar, and you've got free lifts like that. Just remember, free lifts like that. Hi, Richards. Sure. Yeah, the only thing you have to worry about is the wattage of your laptop charger. I know they often cheap out the outlets. My high-end gaming laptop overwatts it, but so does my Rode Steam Deck. Ah, fun. Now, the thing is, HMS Eagle is not the greatest conversion of a carrier in the world, but let's be honest, HMS Eagle, and I will just find her picture of her. So if I go into settings, And I put in a... HMS Eagle wasn't actually that bad. HMS Eagle, for all her many faults, and I am not going to claim, this is not going to be me sitting here claiming the Royal Navy has no bad carriers or anything, but HMS Eagle was actually fairly viable in comparison to Bearn. She was a very useful vessel. And one of the big what-ifs of naval history is if she had been available. And when I say available, I mean actually available in terms of, at Taranto, the level of strike that would have been delivered. For starters, it would have turned Taranto into a multi-strike operation. But also, you could well have had 48. You could have doubled your number of swordfish. You don't have 48, roughly, swordfish involved in the strike. That's going to change the results. That's going to edge up the numbers of hits with torpedoes. I'm not saying it's going to double anything, but it's going to edge them up. And that's a very viable vessel. That's a very flexible vessel. It's not the fastest, but again, if we really want to compare it, HMS Eagle had a top speed of 24 knots. The Bearn was 21 knots. Eagle could carry 25 to 30 aircraft. The Bearn could carry 32. So the Bearn has a slight edge in aircraft. Eagle has... let's see. Eagle has a 4.5-inch belt. The Bearn has an 83mm belt. That's a 3.3-inch belt. The Bearn has 24mm of armour on her flight deck. So she's in some ways the first armoured carrier in certain areas. The Eagle has a 4-inch thick bulkheads and a deck armour of 1 to 1.5 inches thick. And here's the thing. The Eagle displaces 22,000 tons in standard. The Bearn displaces 22,500 tons in standard. The Eagle is 203 meters long. The Bearn is 182.5 meters long. The Eagle has a beam of 35.5 meters. No, 35.1 meters. The Bearn has a beam of 35.2 meters. Sorry, I was reading across both. And the draft of the Bearn is 8.86 meters. The draft of the Eagle in deep load is 8.1 meters. The Bearn could do 6,500 nautical miles at 10 knots. The Eagle could do 4,800 nautical miles at 16 knots. That's their ranges given. And the Eagle had a crew complement of 791 to the 875 of the Bearn. I don't think the Eagle and the Bearn are necessarily good comparisons for for the Bearn. Oh, fine, Richards. Just have an extra hull as an extra hull. I'd rather have Bearn on ASW patrols than Courageous. Yes, we would rather have Bearn on ASW patrols than Courageous, but that's the interesting thing. If we look at World War II, even at the beginning of the war, where Bearn is the only French carrier, and everyone as short of carriers as they can be, she's not used. She's not doing anything. She's sitting over in the Caribbean, and no one really wants to bring her anywhere. In the Caribbean, she's useful as a anti-surface radar deterrence, but that's about what she's being used for. Mathematically, I'm curious, did any Navy engineer ever try to fix the Bearn to be a more useful carrier? In theory, I mean, otherwise they would need therapy. There were all sorts of interesting ideas proposed at various points, but no. The Bearn The Bearn has capabilities, but the thing is, it's designed with the best intentions. It's designed with all these fancy, these different elevators for these different things, so it'd be engineeringly perfect. It's designed with this lower level maintenance area, which allows you to maintain your aircraft theoretically and keep them all going, which is great. It's just the way they choose to design to access it. And let's be honest, it's the forward elevator as well. You've got crab shells on crab shell covers on the other two elevators, which helps, but you have to remember those fold up. And that creates a interesting issue. It really does. Basically, you can argue with all the lift choices. From the very beginning, I would say, when the USN... The fact is, the Royal Navy, the only time they seem to be considering deck-edge elevators, and I have a suspicion they're considering deck-edge elevators, is for Ark Royal, and I think that comes from possibly the conversion history. But they didn't go with them, because they know centerline elevators work, and they also have worries about the North Atlantic, and they have worries about... It's going to sound strange. It's worried about the aircraft being swept off the elevators as they rise up. So it's felt that if you have centerline elevators, you're more likely to be able to keep operating in rougher weather. The US Navy goes, of course, with deck-edge elevators. But, yeah, that's in the Pacific. The Bearn has these centerline elevators, and again, it's answering a question that doesn't need to be asked. You sometimes see this with design and engineering and architecture. You sit there and go, well, hang on, if you'd gone for two elevators of the same size, let's say this big type, forward and aft, right? Then you could have lifted all aircraft, it would be fine, and you could have got them as fast as you could get them, and then it would have worked. But the cycle time of all these elevators is different. All these elevators have different spare parts. They all have different shapes. It's just to make them perfect for torpedo bombers, scout aircraft, fighters. And you're sort of going, I know what you were trying to do. The intentions were good. The intentions, I'm sure, were the best of intentions. But the result is not good. The result is really not good. And so this leads us to the definition of a Bearn. Must be designed with the best intentions. But the very design must mitigate against their function in their role. So we will define things as almost Bearns before christening Navy's Bearns. I thought you'd find it more interesting if I was telling you what ships almost made the Bearn, in my opinion. And means we're not necessarily talking about their worst design. What I found interesting was I wrote this. I wrote out the slides, I prepared everything, and I thought, hang on, Drac produced a video not long ago which was the worst of the interwar years. How much time have we been spending talking to each other? How much time? Sorry about the yawn then. But how much time have we been spending talking to each other recently? Wonder how similar this is going to be. And it's very similar because, to an extent, it's what we're looking at the Bearn in certain navies, the Bearn equivalent. But it's not necessarily the same as saying it's the worst ship. Because the worst ship in a navy might not be felt to be designed with best intentions, and it might not be the fact that its very design functions, which are supposed to make it very good, make it very bad its job. It just might be such a terrible design in the first place that it's never going to be able to do its job. I'm still trying to decide why the flight deck had a hat. That isn't a hat, that's the elevator. Seriously, did she did. I think they did have plans for monoplane aircrafts on board. Vive la difference, yes. So, it's a case of... It's interesting. And I'm going to get some iron brew. I'm going to get some iron brew. As said, down to 4 cans, so I have ordered more today. Ugh. Oh. Now, so, wait, what does the developer do with all that? What advantage does it give you? Theoretically, that's a very fast elevator for getting fighters up, but if you go and check, you'll find it's actually slower than most of the Anglo-American elevators. So no German DD bashing. The Type 1934 doesn't make it into my top 3 of Bearn-like vessels. In fact, technically, there's no German Navy in tonight's video. Because I went with the major powers as in the treaty... Major navies as in the treaty powers. So, I had to pick a period when... Because the major navies... The Soviet Union is not a major navy in the 1920s. But they are a major one in the 1980s. So did I go with them? Did I go with them as major? The American Navy is not a major navy until about the 1920s. Let's be honest. They're starting off in the 1910s, but it's the 1920s by the time they get there. Do I include them? When do I include them? Do I go into the Age of Sail? It's very hard to make the case for any Bearn-like vessels in the Age of Sail. And I could go through the Ironclad era, but there again, there's all sorts of stupid decisions. I basically spent up the entire time committing the entire Royal Navy battle line as a Bearn, because going, yeah, everything which is built before the Sovereign class of the steam battleships just doesn't have freeboard. It's terrible. Schumacher, but I will say this, the Kriegsmarine are included in Saturday's Long Patrol version of this. And no, the Hippers didn't make it. And that was saying something, because deciding what class was going to be the most Bearn-like, i.e. is supposedly designed with the idea of being brilliant at this role, only to muck it up, was so interesting. But for the German Navy in World War II, there is one design with one facet which stood out as being the ultimate, the only, the most Bearn-like design decision you could possibly make. And that is what is in it. So, let's start off with the French. Well, I did go a little bit early because I wanted to put in the Dupuy de Lome. Because, honestly, you cannot, with the French, outburn the Bearn. So, I've put in there almost could be as bad as the Bearns. In which case, I have to go with the Dupuy de Lome. I have to go with the Dupuy de Lome. Because the other criteria is they have to be built and actually commissioned. So, Yeah, this is built, this is commissioned. And this becomes the role model for all subsequent French armoured cruisers. Okay. Here is the thing. The Dupuy de Lome. It is theoretically the world's first armoured cruiser. It's theoretically designed and intended to attack enemy merchant ships. Lovely. It's able to do 4,000 nautical miles at 12.5 knots, which in this time is not bad. It has 3 triple expansion engines and 3 shafts. If you're magically doing a counting of the various, and I do say this, various funnel stacks going on, don't worry. There are many. There are many. But why does this come across as a Bearn? Well, the criteria we have to consider is it has to be designed with the best intentions and its actual design mitigate it doing this role. What is the Dupuy de Lome designed for? It is designed to attack merchant ships. It is designed to be an armoured cruiser. The first armoured cruiser. It is designed to provide them with the capabilities they need. And we're all looking at it and you're all going, well, Alex, what's the problem with this ship? Have a look at this ship and think about it. It's going to hunt down merchant vessels. Where are those merchant vessels going to be? They're going to be probably in the Atlantic. Or in the Pacific. Or in the Indian Ocean. They're going to be around the world. And you have built a hull like this, sailing around the world. Next point, and this is in the 1890s, remember. Next point, remember this is also a cruiser. It is supposed to be an armoured cruiser capable of doing all the operations of a cruiser, and it's the status ship which the Navy under the Junacol was going to build. Okay, that's a lovely thing, but what's the problem here? There's not much deck space for entertaining. What do you mean? Well, sir, we haven't got space for entertaining. We haven't got space for doing the presence mission. Oh, great. You have designed a cruiser which can't do cruising. There goes you. So which of the South American navies is considered the major navy during the Renaissance arm race? Brazil at points. One of the interesting things is we're going to be talking about some ships at a point during this, which are bonus ships included in this group. And they are entirely built as a response to Brazil. Entirely responsible for Brazil. Knight 123, hello. They get very. Sorry, I noticed. I saw Knight 6831. And I missed out that there was an exploitsman was I thought it was Knight 123. Hello, Knight 123. I have 2 knights in the chat. A wine bunker would have to be included in any French design. I think a wine bunker was included in this design. Then we have the Mogador class of Contra Torpilla. Well, honestly, I was tempted to include any of the Contra Torpillas in this because I have a small problem with the design. They have designed a destroyer so fast. So fast. It's all built around speed. It's great for them. 2 small problems. Just 2. One, you've designed it so fast but that your actual weapons have trouble engaging at the top speed, so it can't actually use that speed for an engagement, it can only use it for getting away, and that difference can be massive in terms of its likely outcome of success. Mainly because you haven't included enough power, but also enough targeting systems. But also, I have another problem with you doing this with the contra-torpedoes. And it's the reason why I've put them in this group, but it's also the reason why they do not outburn the Bearn. Because you have designed a destroyer with a top speed of 39 knots. That fires torpedoes, which have a top speed of able to do 14 kilometers at 35 knots, or 9 kilometers at 39 knots. Spot the problem, anyone? There can only be one night I demand a jousting. Second, I didn't choose the pre-dreads because honestly they're low-hanging fruit. And there were ones which were better examples of it. Hello, History Vanguard. I'm sorry to hear that, History Vanguard, about the college yet again refusing to let you do A levels. You're talking about the Ducasines, and that's just terrible. The torpedoes are faster than the ship. The point about this is, your torpedoes aren't as fast as your destroyer. That's going to cause problems when you launch them. Now, yes, you could swing all the way round, launch them off to the side, and then you have to swing around the whole way to launch the other ones off the other side. Because, again, she has 5 able to fire on each side. You could outrun your torpedoes and catch them back with your hull. Yes, Albazaski, you could. And the point is, there are torpedoes going around, a lot of them, which are designed to be faster at this point. It's one of those things, both the Americans and the Japanese and the British and pretty much every nation on Earth has variations of the same program going on, which is developing fuel and high-speed torpedoes, which can do 40 plus knots, 45, 47 knots. So why the French, when they are obsessed with developing the world's fastest and biggest destroyers, then do not turn around and go, we will develop these torpedoes as well? I do not know. Now, they're also armed with 5.46 inch guns, or 138.6mm guns. Which I also find absurd, but let's be honest, I find a lot of things absurd in life, but I'm not sure at what point, and someone usually makes the case to me that the French are merely converting imperial guns to millimeters, and that's why they end up with weird guns. But I am trying to think of what point they decided to go and grab out the 138.6mm or 5.46 inch gun dimensions from anywhere. 127mm, surely that would have done. 5 inch, plain 5 inch. There are many options I can see you going and tracking down, but who goes and thinks, you know what, I've got to make a new gun for this ship. It's going to be the 138.6mm. Who are you? What are you on when you decide to do this? Now, the 1929 version of this gun had been used on the Le Fantastique class. And the 1934 version is used on the Mogadors. Either way, for either class, one has to wonder exactly what kind of... How do I put this? Was it an especially strong and potent absinthe that the design committee was drinking the day they designed this class? I'm just wondering. Zachary Gherkin, I do wonder how the tribals would have handled if the Royal Navy had had a good dual-purpose 5.5-inch gun. Well, if it is a good dual-purpose mount, i.e. unlike the 4.7, which couldn't go high enough, but actually can go high enough, so it's a good dual-purpose mount, as well as the guns, and they've got 8 5.5-inch guns, then I'm fairly certain there would be a few more cruisers which were shredded by Royal Navy destroyers in World War II. Okay. They're on a lot of wine. I can presume they're on a lot of something. And Coversman at 13.29 knots, it's all the wormwood in the absinthe. Modern Schroer, it comes from 20-pounder guns? I have no idea, but I still don't understand. It's just... No. Ay, caramba. So here's the bonus of French. Now, I will say this now. I have no idea what happens to the designers of the French Navy battleships between about 1920 and 1930, but somehow they certainly start creating good designs. Because this is what they're actually designing! Okay? This is the Normandy class. This is what Bearn was going to look like. This is the Corsair class. The Corsair class are actually in service. Yes. The Corsair class are actually in service. And there's actually still around till until after World War II. They are armed, and I kid you not, with 6 twin 12-inch guns. And that's their layout. You're sort of going, okay. They have a top speed of 21 knots. Lovely. They have a range of 4,200 nautical miles at 10 knots. Fine. Their belt, and I will bring this up because it's worthwhile considering. HMS Dreadnought, who's built in 1905, 1906 time, it has an armour belt of between 4 and 11 inches thick. The Corsair class has a waterline belt of between 5 and 5.5 and 9.8 inches thick. I.e., their belt is actually thinner than HMS Dreadnought's. And they are built 5 years after her. And they have an extra pair of guns for their broadside, but let's be honest, that's not much of an advantage. And that is thanks to an extra turret. But it gets worse because we have the Normandy class. This is the Normandy class. Now, if you were watching UAD, which I think the video of it came out on Tuesday this week, you'll notice I built a Normandy class in UAD. When I did the Twitch stream last Friday. And she was supposed to be armed with 12 13.4-inch guns. And yes, you can say this is the best they could build at this time. But the fact is, they also had a design of the ship which would have had a quadruple gun forward, backed up by a twin turret, and a quadruple gun aft, backed up by a twin turret. And they decided that no, what they should do is go with 3 quadruple turrets. Let's think about quadruple turret technology in let's see when they're laid down. 1913, when they're laid down. Let's think about quadruple gun technology. When 1 gun in a turret is 1x problems. 2 guns in a turret are 2x problems. 3 guns in a turret are 4x problems. 4 guns in a turret are 8x problems. You have 3 turrets, all of which are quadruples, all of which are going to be presenting you with issues. And by the way, you're slow. I think pre-dreadnoughts are better somehow. Well, these are the French bonus. But at least the pre-dreadnoughts, at least those vessels of the sort of the sovereign level and the steam battleship level of what we were traditionally called pre-dreadnought sort of style, had the excuse of being produced in that time period. This has come into this is being built 8 years after HMS Dreadnought has entered the world. There are literally ships being under construction which have 15-inch guns and have more powerful broadsides. Coming up with Corvette versus Tegethoff, you have to ask that question. I'm fairly sure the Tegethoff could wipe the of the Corvette. The Corvette. Very good, Leo. At least those were to be double twin turrets. 6 to 7 times problems? No, because if you think about it, you've got the if you're operating a double twin turret design, you've got even more problems inside it because you've got the way the 2 turret mechanisms interact. And the fact is, if you're operating double turret mechanism, you then have all the other issues about how their one side firing will affect the other side firing. You know, it looks like it's meant to be about like 6 twins in 3 positions. There is all sorts of ideas about that class. There is all sorts of ideas. Let's go. I think the song is 99 Problems. Yeah, 99 Problems, the Corvette, frankly, now is there's about 98 of them. Normandy class is like 198 of them, 99 Problems. Ay, caramba. But, yes. That gets us out of the French, and now we can start on the next navy. And this is probably going to launch me straight into issues, but, you know, I'm going to go there. The Turbine class. And really, this could have gone with almost any, again, of the small Italian destroyers. Yes, the more Dakar approach. You can certainly claim it's something like that. So, the main problem of the Italian Navy with their small destroyers comes down to the fact that they like the idea of designing things to be small and fast and aggressive, but that forgets several parts of the destroyer role. If they just called them torpedo boats and not called them destroyers, they'd probably been fine. But the moment they call them destroyers, they expect to do destroyer role. There are some more questions about the battleships coming in. Naval, Dusty, did the French look at the speed guns armor triangle and decide it would be better to have a smaller triangle? I think the French looked at the speed guns armor triangle and decided that they were going to create a whole new triangle called Ugly ugly and ugly. Let's be honest, I'm not sure how they go from designing something quite so obscenely ugly as these things and then turns them into something like the Dunkirks. At least not a turret on top of a turret. That was very nearly included in this list. That was very nearly included, that turret on top of a turret scenario. It was very nearly included. So, Regia Marina. Starting off with the Turbine class. And I went with the turbines because they're really sort of one of the best examples of this. They are 1,000 tons standard, 1,700 tons fully loaded. They're capable of doing 33 knots. This is wonderful. But then you look at them and go, well, they've got 4 4.7-inch guns in 2 twin turrets. Okay. They've got 2 single 40mm guns. Okay. They've got 4 twin 13.2mm guns. They are powered by Thornycroft boilers and Parsons geared steam turbines, as is traditional for Italian construction. It's one of the great things about the qualitative race that was going on in the Dreadnought race. And you have to remember the qualitative race included Italy, Japan, America, and Britain. Really, France would like to claim they were. The Austro-Hungarians deserve an honourable mention. The Germans were nowhere near it in the qualitative race of the Dreadnought side. But you then realise that both Italy and Japan are heavily wedded into the wider British maritime infrastructure and construction network. Now, why have I put these here? Because they can't be destroyers. The Italians get so focused on deciding them to be fast and aggressive with their torpedoes, and small and fast and light, that they actually can't be destroyers, in the sense of destroying other vessels. The thing is, the destroyers comes from torpedo boat destroyers. If you're not built to destroy other torpedo boats, you have a problem. You're not a destroyer. Please note the reason I'm distracted is I'm looking up and I've noticed there is a weird mark on one of the pieces of wood up there, as if some paint stripped off, and I'm wondering when that's happened, or how that's happened. I'll have to have a look at it later. But you can't be all things to all people. It's just not possible. If you are built to be the one thing. If you're built to be fast, you're fast. So it's kind of like the Contra-Torpilliers, but unlike the Contra-Torpilliers, who have the saving grace of being big, and so they have a lot of firepower, even if they can't really use it at high speed, they can still do the escort role, and they do the escort role pretty darn well. These vessels can't really escort them. And it's one of the things with the Kriegsmarine, you're probably used to me saying, oh, they have real problems in World War II because they don't have the destroyers to escort their capital ships, so they can't do the movements they'd like to do. But with the Italian Navy, they have a similar issue. The reason they have to use their cruisers so much to escort their capital ships is because their destroyers really cannot do a large chunk of the escort role, and that is the anti-destroyer role. They have some destroyers which can, but a large chunk of them, and even some of them, are actually redesignated torpedo boats at the beginning of World War II. So, a large amount of them are literally torpedo boats. I'm sorry, but I'm just going to check that position up there because it's annoying me. don't have to fill you in with filler. Make you look nice and neat. I wonder why that bit's chipped off though. Bits of wood don't normally randomly chip off. Oh. I hope it's not water damage. I don't think it is. Oh, I have to go up and check the roof. That's what I have to do. Check the roof. Probably put some silver paint up here to further help the wood. That should be a good thing. Yeah, it should be good. That should be fine. Ba-da-da-ding-da. There we go. Harmonics, you can't make the Defiant out of a runabout. That's pretty much it. That's the trouble for the Italians. They have these wonderful aggressive vessels, and actually what's worse for these vessels is then they get stuck doing escort duty. And the whole point about them is they're small, fast, and light, so they're supposed to do defensive action. Charge in, launch their torpedoes, get out of there. And they can't do that, because they've got to protect something. Sorry, Knight 1, 2, 3. So they're very good at killing ships, but when keeping other ships safe from similar size ship, as it's safe, it lacks the capability to fight it. Yep. It's fun with two knights in the chat, because I have to be now. Instead of just nicknaming one knight, and just calling one knight, I'm having to make sure I read out the numbers. Hello, Leslie. And that then leads us to the Zara class. Okay, so the idea for these was that they would be an improvement over the Trento class. And the Trento class was still being built at this point when they were being designed. But the Trento class, of course, were not considered that great. Why were they not considered that great? Because despite them being definitely over the treaty limits, they were not that strong. They were not that sort of well armored, and it was decided that they needed to have better armor. That you needed to have a ship have better armor in order to be more survivable. That they were building an 8-inch cruiser and it wasn't survivable enough. So they designed the Zara class. You're going to guess what I'm going to say. Where do they fail here? Well, they decide they're going to ignore the treaty, which they pretty much already ignored with the Trentos, but leave that to one side. And they're going to design them completely without the limitations. Well, here's a small starting issue. They first off look at having an 8-inch belt, and then they decide they can't get that on and also be 32 knots of speed. And this was important to them because apparently speed was what really mattered. If you consider the reason the Trentos are the shape they are is because they can go a whopping 35.65 knots in trials. They went 31 knots in actuality in the service most of the time, but they've gone 35.65 knots. No, the Trentos. The Trentos, and I'll put up a picture of the Trento so you can see sort of the differential between them and the Zaras. Settings, change that to desktop and bring it up. So, here we go. This is the Trentos. As you can see, they're flush-decked. Again, they follow the Italian habit of having their aircraft stored at the front. And I would be talking about that a lot here, but I'm going to get into that more in the light cruisers that are coming afterwards, because that's frankly a doozy of an idea. It's a lovely idea, but, you know, in the whole point of the Zara class was supposed to be the more armoured, more survivable version of the Trentos, and taking even less notice of the treaties. But they're immediately going, hang on, no, we want them too fast, so we have to get rid of that. And we have to keep their armour down. So instead of having an 8-inch armour belt, or rather a 7.9-inch armour belt, they end up with a 5.9-inch armour belt. Now this means they have a 150mm belt, which is twice the thickness of the Trentos. Okay, so that's armoured. Their deck is 70mm, which is the same thickness as the belt on the Trentos. Turrets are 150mm, same as the belt on their design, but actually thicker than 50mm thicker than the Trentos. And the conning tower is also thicker. So yeah, they have all this extra armor. That's great, right? Well, you see, it's more than just armor when you're designing a ship. And if you're going to cheat properly. And if you're going to cheat, definitely cheat properly. If you want to make a better version of the Trento, make a better version of the Trento. But they're so worried about the speed that they don't. They're so worried, they get rid of torpedo tubes. They reduce the armor thickness. They introduce a cut-down deck rather than a flush deck. But most importantly, guess what they do? And this is the biggest problem for the Zara class from my personal perspective. If you want to make this ship more survivable. This has 4 shafts. I.e. 4 propellers. 4 turbines. This one, the supposed survival version, has 2. If we all remember what happens at Matapan, where 3 of this class get sunk. The Polar gets injured by a single torpedo. A single torpedo hits her. Hits the Polar. And what does it knock out? Her engines. Because she only has 2 shafts, 2 turbines. If you are making a ship and designing it for survivability in the cruiser role, where you know you're not going to be able to fit a massive amount of armour around it, you're not going to be able to do what Ronley and Nelson have done, which is basically have their engines in a massive armour box, then you have to design for survivability through numbers. You have to put things in series, so you have, you know, boilers, engines, boilers, engines. So any hit will only knock out maximum 1 set of boilers and 1 set of engines. And so you're not stopped, dead. You don't become a sitting duck. You know, that is the irony of World War II. The supposedly more survivable of the Italian heavy cruisers is the one which gets knocked out in a single shot because, guess what? It might have armour, but some person thought that a sensible thing to remove, to improve weight, displacement, and, you know, try and make it look closer like it was like the treaties, were the engines which provide it with the survivability of movement. Oh, your mum's got less military. Your mum's COVID vaccine was just around the corner from Swan Islands. Anders. Cool. My mum's was also this week. It was a fun time. She didn't have a good thing for next for 2 days afterwards. Long ago, would a good analogy of the turbine class be like the ME-109 being hamstrung next to the H-11s for escort? To an extent, yeah. Sure, because 32 knots is a huge tactical difference versus 30 knots. It's a massive one, isn't it? After Matapon, what would happen if they got one Zara back to Alexandria? Probably the Royal Navy would have crowed about it for a month, but I doubt it would have been used much. It would depend on what condition it's got back in. If it's got back in a useful condition, then it might have been reflagged as Royal Navy and sent to the Indian Ocean to support extra forces out there, but I doubt it would have been used in the Mediterranean or anywhere like that. They might have given it to Greece. They might have given it to another of the Allied navies to crew. It would certainly make more sense probably for them to operate than the Royal Navy. Hi, Bishop. Shamak, maybe if you don't force the power through 2 shafts, you get more efficient power. Oh, that too. The least thing is, okay, you don't necessarily have to go 4 shaft arrangement. You could go 3 shaft arrangement. Anything that would have stopped the Polar being dead in the water would have saved you a lot of trouble. As John said, a Captain Zara will be towed back to UK, put on display and used to sell many warbunds. If you think about how you sail it back to the UK from Alexandria, think about it. You'd have to sail it around Africa. You'd have to sail it up the coast of Africa, maybe across the Bay of Biscay, maybe... And it's just a whole load of complication to get it back to the UK. You can send war reels around. You can, in the nicest way, there'll be photo footage, there'll be all sorts of things taken of it. That means you don't need to send Zara itself around. I think the main debate would have been whether the Polish or the Greeks get them. Because, you know... The Polish won everything. But here is their Bearn. Their Bearn is the Gisciano class. Okay, let's start. So, the French are building large destroyers. Yes, they are. And we're Italy, so we build small destroyers. Because they're basically torpedo boats. And we keep forgetting we might need them for actually perform an escort mission. So... what will our response be? We're going to build cruisers, which are destroyers, on performance-enhancing drugs. Yeah. Are we going to armor them like cruisers? No, that's the thing. We're going to make them super fast. Oh, that's so cool. That's so smart. And then what we're also going to do, we're going to start this standard, where what we do is we put our aircraft in our bow. Really? Yeah, and there's going to be no armor. There's going to be no protection. It's going to have aviation fuel up there and everything. In the bow. In front of the 4 guns and the magazines to support them. Oh, that's world global smart. And, you know, to make it even better, even better, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make them top heavy because we're going to build them so lightly, which means they're going to have trouble aiming their guns at high speeds, which means, you know, it's just going to get better and better. And, you know, with the French destroyers, that like La Fantastique, etc., let alone the destroyers of like the Mogador class, you could have a closing speed of both ships doing 37 knots at the same time of 74 knots. Yeah. Or 76 knots if it's facing a Mogador. And if you think about that in simpler ways, that's a closing the range of 138 kilometers an hour. Or roughly, now let's think about this, 2.3 kilometers a minute. But don't worry, I have yet to give you the best part of it. You will start with 6-inch guns that have a range, and I kid you not, when they're first launched, of 28.4 kilometers. 28.4. Okay? So that will give you, like, I don't know, 3 minutes of firing before you're in range of the guns that are Le Fantastique. But don't worry, it gets better, because as time goes on, yeah, and we know how good quality control is, so the likelihood of you actually doing damage at that range is minimal anyway. But, you know, as time goes on, the guns are actually going to get shorter range. They're only going to be able to fire at 22.6 kilometers. So that means you've got a minute of extra firing. Shells which probably don't work before you're in gunnery range of your enemy. And you have got just enough armor on your belt, because it's 24 millimeters thick, to trigger the shells. It's big brain thinking, this one, everyone. It is absolutely, someone has got some really smart ideas going. I don't know. Oh. Ajax mucked one up. Tribal class destroyers used to eat these things up. The nicest way, they've got armor just thick enough to arm destroyer shells no matter where they hit. Blackbird Maximus. Clearly, if the Poles had large Tribal class destroyers with 4.7 dual-purpose guns and 24.5-inch oxygen-rich torpedoes, Germany would have lost their navy earlier. Oh, let's be honest. The Italian navy is interesting. The German navy, yeah. Let's put it this way: the only class of light cruisers that I would describe as even worse than this one, in terms of actually being able to fight their opponent, are probably the Königsbergs. McLenison, are you certain this isn't worse than the Bearn? It's the equivalent, the Italian equivalent of the Bearn. I'm not making qualitative assessments between them as whether one is more Bearny than the Bearn, but you know, this is definitely a good line for outburning the Bearn. Someone had a range of very smart ideas. Let me put it this way. The whole way through, when I was recording the video earlier for Saturday, I kept returning to the phrase in my head, oh, this person was definitely visited by the good idea fairy. Because here is the logic that's gone into these ships. The destroyers are fast. We therefore have to go fast to kill them. So everything must be sacrificed to make our cruisers fast. So we will. But we will also build... And here's the thing for the aircraft in the foredeck. If you put the aircraft at the front of the ship, they can take off into wind, which is great. And you can go, well, you know, they can always fly back to an Italian base for their recovery instead of being recovered on the ship, because let's be honest, if you're trying to winch them in a position and load them into the hangar at the front, you're going to have fun times. But think about that from a logical perspective. This is a seaplane taking off. If it's now got to factor in not returning to the ship it's supporting and providing scouting and reconnaissance information for, but flying back to the nearest land base for recovery, that's going to limit its time above you and its reconnaissance ability to support your fleet. It's basically putting a cut, an automatic limiter on your organic air power and air support. So it's really not sensible. In the nicest way, Atlantas and Didos can eat these. And they will do. It's... I need some iron brew. Okay, I just need some iron brew. I need a quick drink. And this is the regular reminder that iron brew is non-alcoholic for those who still persist in commenting that I am getting drunk during videos. I do find it funny because, no, this is just me normally. I don't actually drink alcohol. Imagine how bad I'd be if I did. Yeah, that's a good reason for me not to drink. A battlecruiser is unfair. To be honest, most of these things, it's unfair for them to fight anything which is realistically a dangerous opponent. They also carried 4 21-inch torpedoes. Always nice to have, I suppose. And, yeah, they had 6 4-inch guns. The 4-inch guns could also... Here is the thing. Most of the 4-inch guns, secondaries, on most of the destroyers... well, most of the... Oh, well, I suppose, wait. The X-mounts on the tribal destroyers, once they're trained to 4-inch guns, could be used to penetrate the hull on these ships. The secondaries on pretty much most British cruisers, other than the Didos, were 4-inch guns that could be used to pepper these cruisers. And I would hate to think what would happen to any of them if they ended up on a fight with an actual anything approaching a decent-sized cruiser. Honestly, I think there is part of me which is fairly ready to assume that a town-class cruiser, well-armed, well-crewed, could probably have taken on all 4 of them. Because that has some survivability. Probably 2 town-class, let's be fair. So let's go to the IJN. You might notice a theme here keeps coming up into the destroyers, it's small ships. Because it's very easy to burn up a destroyer. It is incredibly easy to burn up a destroyer. You know how you do it? You go absolutely obsessive with the idea of making it the most powerful destroyer you can. You either want to make it the fastest, you want to make it the most dangerous attacking thing, like the Italians do, or you go for the most heavily armed. Yes, welcome to the Fubuki class. What are considered by many as the first modern destroyer, they are really quite a capable vessel. However, they are also an impressive ability to make your own ship practically suicidal with top weight. All because you want to build the most defensive destroyer possible. You want to build, aka like with a Bearn, you wanted to build the best engineeringly possible aircraft carrier. In this scenario, you are trying to build under the Washington Treaty, when remember there is no upper limit on how big you can build your destroyers. They decide they want to build the most powerful destroyer they can, and they still screw it up. Sugar poisoning, possibly. Probably. Fun Ducky. Insisting, not persisting. Sure, Mac. But what could be possibly done to make it resistant to destroyers? It's not like 4 inches of arm belt and splinter protection would have done it. Pretty much, let's be honest. Yeah, I know that I'm saying it's sarcasm, but yeah. Pac-Man Maximus. In large counties with 4 triples and 8-inch arms, 24-inch torpedoes would be quite destructive. They would have. Malaga, is this the point where we should be worried about all modern frigate destroyer designs? Oh, we can get there. Man, it's the fallacy of fleets that feel outnumbered. You overgun the thing because you need every gun. Yes. Shumac, then again, I would for every destroyer without dual-purpose guns on this list, but that's just my bugbear. I can understand that, but would it be in? Would they necessarily be in your top 3 of this list? So, the Fubukis. As we were saying, they are interesting vessels. And when I say interesting vessels, I mean interesting vessels. They displace 1,780 tons in standard. And they carry 6 5-inch, that's 127mm, 50 cal, dual-purpose naval guns in 3 twin turrets. 2 Type 93 13mm machine guns. 9 610mm 24-inch, that is, torpedo tubes in 3 triples. They could carry 18 torpedoes. Later they carried 18 Type 90 torpedoes and 18 depth charges. So they can reload their torpedoes, which is a good thing. It's a useful thing. I am often of the opinion that I'm not sure whether all 3 mounts are equally reloadable, because it's going to sound strange looking at the superstructure, etc., and their shaping and the design. I've always felt the torpedo mount between the funnels never looked to me like actually reloading it was at sea would be a viable scenario. You might be able to do it, but I'd say more likely you could reload the ones the ones on the deck level, not the ones between the funnels. Now, here is the point. You want to build a ship like this? Great. You know what? Even better. Under the Washington Treaty, you have no limitations. You could build one with 4 turrets if you wanted. But here is the thing. Here is the small, itsy-bitsy issue. If under the Washington Treaty, you have no limitation as to the displacement of the destroyers you build, other than they have to be less than 10,000 tons, and let's be honest, destroyers are going to be less than 10,000 tons in this period by a long margin, then why are you limiting yourself so? Why are you designing a vessel with a beam of 10.4 meters when probably it needs a beam of 11 meters with all that top weight? In fact, I would say probably about 11.5 meters. So I'd make the beam, make it about a meter fatter. Why are you limiting yourself? If you want to, then in the nicest way, you can grow its length. You could grow its length because you want to retain the same beam to length ratio. So you'd probably be going, right then, instead of 118.41 meters overall, let's go for 126 meters overall. That one should work. And what do you gain then? Well, you gain a vessel which is more seaworthy, less top-heavy, and will still carry all those guns. And you know what? Even better? Even better? If you want to, you can make it to a 12-meter beam. You can probably lengthen it out to, I don't know, 130 meters. That's going to be interesting. And, well, if you want to do then, I have a good idea for you. You could fit in an extra turret without any trouble with the top weight. And then you'd have 8 of those dual-purpose guns, 9 torpedoes, and frankly, you'd be the scariest ship known to mankind. And if you do have the fatter beam, you could possibly fit in a quadruple torpedo launcher, probably on the waist ones. In which case, you'd have a broadside of 11 torpedoes to fire. And you could do all that whilst maintaining stability if you just made it a little bit fatter. Just a little bit. If you want to deal with top weight, and by the way, this is a trick for UAD as well. If you have high instability, theoretically, in top weight, you should be able to make it broader beam. If you make it fatter, that should deal with some of your stability issues by providing a deeper, wider hull at the bottom. Excellent, you just built a tribal. Exactly. And the tribal is what, 100 tons more in stand displacement? And honestly, nicest way, this would be a super tribal, because let's be honest, the tribal gives up torpedoes for guns. This thing would still have its 18 torpedoes and its 9 launchers. And as it said, it could have as many as 33. It could have as many as 22 torpedoes and able to launch a broadside of 11 if you wanted. Or it could have 11 torpedoes, 12 reloads, so it could carry 23 torpedoes, be able to launch 11 for its first broadside, then 8, and then 4. Blackburn Maximus, it would have been great if they just built 2,000 to 3,000 ton destroyers and called them fleet destroyers before London Treaty. Yes, it would have been. And that could have actually worked. And you see, if the Japanese had built it, then everyone else would have the copy. You can then imagine what the... Let's be honest, not even what the tribals. Imagine what the Fletcher would look like in a world where this thing was about 2,200 tons in displacement and had 8 guns. And 11 torpedo and a broadside 11 torpedoes. Just imagine how nuts the American designers would go on that destroyer. And this ship, the Fubukis can do 38 knots. And you wouldn't compromise speed as long as you can maintain the length to beam ratio. In fact, you could probably increase speed because you could factor in more boilers. And again, they have 2 shaft Campen geared turbines with 4 or 3 boilers, depending on which design they are. So you could have actually maybe put in a 3rd turbine, a 3rd shaft, with the space you get. It's really, really annoying what could have been. Because again, the Washington Treaty has no limitations on the quantity of ships you can build under 10,000 tons and on any level of ship under 10,000 tons. So as long as it's below 10,000 tons, you can build as many of whatever you like under the Washington Treaty. This is the main problem I have when I start talking about Lexington and Saratoga, and people go, well, you shouldn't critique them for having 8-inch guns. They needed it for their protection. I go, no. When they're being designed, when they're being constructed, you do not have the limitations of the London Treaty. You could build extra cruisers to protect them. You could have built extra cruisers to protect them. You didn't need to fit 8-inch guns on them. You could have given them an escort cruiser. So the Takeo class has a beam of 1920 meters. Is that too small? And how big do they need to solve the same issues like the Fubuki? I'd have to look at the dimensions and tonnage to work it out. But as a rough rule of thumb, try and keep the dimensions the same, but work out what's their degree of over separation, and then start adding for every degree, add on about 5 to 10 centimeters. Is usually what I work with. And then round up to give yourself a safety margin. So, the next class. The Megamis. Water or iron brew? Which shall I go with? I'm going with more iron brew. Hello. You stay there. The Megamis. How have they made this list? Is it because of their absolutely atrocious funnel aesthetic? No. Is it because someone decided to put a flat top in the middle of my cruiser? No. Is it because someone decided that, frankly, they wanted a class of cruisers which would actually kill more of each other than would kill their opponents? Sadly, no. Although that's not really surprising considering the design. The reason they are here is because they are designed from the get-go to be able to upgrade it to being 8-inch cruisers. Okay? You've designed them so. The 6-inch turrets, the triple 6-inch turrets, are able to be replaced with 8-inch turrets. You designed from the get-go to do that. At no point does some sensible person sit there and ask the question, but sir, if we're going to design this to be able to upgrade to 8-inch cruiser, shouldn't we design it so we can upgrade its armour and its protection to that of equivalent to an 8-inch cruiser? Nope. Not a single sausage. Not a single baked bean. Not a single shiitake mushroom asked that question. Why are... This is the question. You can imagine it. It's with all these classes, I basically used the criteria of what would have been the difference with this class if anyone had asked why during their construction. And if you could have made a matter, and they were pasting it based on how big a difference could be made if someone had asked why. And basically, in this class, you could have asked why a lot of times. Why? 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 Why could have been asked so many times. Why is it just going to have a 3.9-inch belt? Why is the belt of a magazine going to be only 5.5 inches? Why is the deck only going to have 1.4 inches of armor? Why do the turrets only have 0.98 inches of armor? Isn't that just enough to actually ignite a, actually set off the detonator when it hits? Isn't that just enough to trigger it? Why do the magazines have 5 inches of armor around them as well, and the belt have 5.5 inch armor? Because that's just confusing me. And why, if we're only carrying 3 float planes, does our back look quite so weird? And why, oh why again did we end up with this funnel arrangement? What happened? Who hurt our architect? It's fascinating how all these peacetime ships are really quite bad for peacetime. Nelsons are ugly, Fubukis are unstable, Bearn is the hot garbage, and the Contratoms are expensive. Yeah. Nelsons, I wouldn't say are ugly. They are... Nelsons are beautiful in a function over form way. You realise just they are literally just what they are. They are armour with guns on top. And that stark simplicity is kind of beautiful in its own way. Marnus, can we take a moment to praise Mogami's damage control officer, who was brave and responsible enough to ditch the oxygen torpedoes rather than wishfully thinking they wouldn't cook off? We can! We can praise the man, although we can also ask the question as to what were they doing putting such a sensible and intelligent individual in such a floating death trap? Shumak, the 10-gun 8-inch broadside is far more important than any amount of armor. Besides, we won't need that stupid. Americans will never think to shoot back at us. Oh, good lord. The Japanese apparently found Italian signs and like them said, nah, too well protected. Yeah! Let's put it this way. There is something, when you're looking at the Trento class and going, you're well protected. That's the Megamis. Yeah, you probably need to add at least. I would say you probably would be looking at least making them about 70 foot wide, and you probably need to increase their length appropriately to maintain their sort of their weight to, their length to beam ratio. Tim Richards, I like the bird now. I was asking you, come on, those Japanese funnels are awesome. Nelsons equal utilitarian design. Yeah, pretty much. That's what they are. Nelsons are a pure utilitarian design. They are basically a machine of destruction. That is what they are designed for. That is what they are, and that is what they will do. They are nothing extraneous. They are literally for that role. So, Megami class. Yeah. I can just put the 8-inch guns in triples. Yes. Honestly, they had triple 6-inch guns, but if you think about it, you've got 10 8-inch guns here. If you design it and you capped over one of those turrets and you put in triple 8-inch guns, A, B, C, D, you'd end up with a 12 8-inch gun broadside, which could well explain a lot of things instead of a 10-gun broadside. But also, you'd be making use of space of that deck, because that is a lot of deck space. Come on, Rodney is a very close second to Warspite. Pretty much my favourite ships of the Royal Navy's capital ships of World War II goes Renown, Warspite, Rodney. Because of what they do and because of what they are. But I'm also not going to declare that Rodney is aesthetically beautiful. She is not conventionally beautiful. She is beautiful in a utilitarian, stark, sort of pure power design kind of way. But she's not beautiful as in beautiful, graceful ship that you sort of go, oh, lovely lines. Renown is probably the most beautiful of those three. They need so many things adapted to them to make. And again, this is the point. If you're already building something, and this is the point about the Japanese, if you're already building something which you're going to claim is 8,500 tons, you're already lying. It's actually 11,000 tons in standard, and you are building it in between 1931 and 37. Why, in the name of all things, chicken nugget? Why are you not cheating properly? This is my point. I make it regularly, and I will make it again. And I will probably be making it till the day I die. But if you're going to cheat on a treaty, cheat properly. Don't half it. Lombo. Okay, Alex, we somehow have the same capital shit list despite never mentioning it ever. It works. The IGN cruiserweight problems can be blamed on naval treaties setting a limit that doesn't make sense at 10,000 tons. Really wasn't mounted to make a decent heavy cruiser. Yeah, but the thing is, they're cheating! They're already lying! You might as well lie properly. Mark Honest, a Mogami planned out with a county class magically fitting armor would still be better. It would be what, 32, 33 knots? Well, she designed 37 knots. But again, that's the other thing. If you designed her to be upgraded, have her armor upgraded, like what happened with the county class, where they suddenly got extra belt armor added on the whole way along, that could have been fine. She might have even lost only just a couple of knots, because, again, she's got a lot of power in there. She's got 4 shafts, 4 geared steam turbines. Most of them have they have between 8 and 10 Campon boilers, depending on which ship we're talking about. Yeah, they could have done it. When they added on torpedo bulges, they dropped their speed to about 35 knots. I mean, Amelia Barr, I would have said an LG3 would have been quite pretty. Potentially. But I will warn you, I will probably be getting... there's a video coming up on Saturday morning, which I will not be surprised if it gets me a load of very, very strongly worded messages all over the internet on me, because I have gone into the naming of the G3s and the N3s, and I have been looking through the history, and I haven't found the thing that people kept telling me I would find. And maybe I've missed it. There's always a chance, and I've said that in the video. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm probably going to get a lot of people upset with me at certain points. And I have to record a video for Sunday morning. I haven't decided what I'm going to put out Sunday morning. As I say, at least they have your favourite baby seat. Yes, they do have my favourite turret formation for the Ford. That is probably what saves them from becoming the next thing. Hi, Jack Ray. Well, basically, the problem, as I'll explain it, is the whole idea of naming them saints is the fourth saint would be St. Patrick. And with Ireland going independent and their issues in Ireland since 1917, since 1916, 1917, basically there's been issues in Ireland for a long time at that point, in the 1920s, I don't think they would name a ship St. Patrick. And then you go through the rest and it becomes even more issue-y. Blackburn Maximus, if the Megami and Taco had armour and guns that were swappable, would it be possible to build trade protection light cruisers with guns and armour? You'd have to build the hulls, and that's going to be the problem. It's possible, but you'd have to have the space to build the hulls. So, what is the burniest of the Japanese fleet? Well, there's only really one option for the burn of the Japanese fleet, and that is the Ryujo. Where some bright spark thought we're going to get away with this, we're going to stick an island-structured, single-hangared, 24 aircraft carrier through underneath the 10,000-ton limit. It wouldn't have been top-heavy, it'd been perfectly fine. But some bright spark has a good idea. But if we stick another hangar on top of it, and we make it flush deck, we can take 48 aircraft. And at no point did anyone turn around to him and go, but why? Why would we? Why? Because the whole point is we want to build a mass volume of these. And, you know, we're not exactly stupid, so presumably we know that if you do that, you are going to make it a lot more complicated. You're going to have all that funnel trunking system again, which is great for top weight. You're going to have all the bridge structure underneath the flight deck here at that position, which is going to be fun and it's going to put a lot of weight forward. You're going to have all sorts of issues through your hull, because your hull and everything, which you are in the process of building when they decide to make this decision, is designed for a single flight deck. So why? Why? You know, when this vessel has the issues it does, when it has to go back in and be pretty much rebuilt, these problems are all complicated because of it. If they had left it as a 24 plane air carrier, a 24 aircraft carrier, A, they could have mucked around the lift far more than they actually did, so they wouldn't have been so limited in aircraft later on in the war, when the war happened. But B, 24 aircraft and less than 10,000 tons, probably what you've had is the Americans and British, under the London Treaty of 1930, would make a new category. They probably would create the small carrier or the light carrier category. Probably, if you consider there's a light and heavy cruiser, they probably make the fleet and light carrier scenario. That'd be the sort of agreement they'd have. Sort of like the destroyer and the destroyer leader and the fleet, the destroyer leader and the destroyer. If you look at the 1930 agreement, it makes all these different sort of agreements. You have the destroyer leader, you have the light and heavy cruiser. You know, you could have imagined someone going, right then, we need to make a light carrier. And everything under 15,000 tons becomes a light carrier. And it's a new category. New category. Because it only has 24 aircraft, so why are you getting obsessed with it? And that Maximus, it would have been better to just design it with a good decade lifts to open more space in it. Yes, it's again something else you could have done. When if it was only a single if it was only a single hangar, you could have had a decade lift. Longbow. Forgive me for saying this. I'm seeing a pattern here. More DACA, red goes faster. Red stripes, and now bigger is best. Yes. Basically, it's when you go, I'm going to make this the best under 10,000 ton carrier there could possibly be by cramming in as many aircraft as I possibly can, and then you muck it up. It's not a case of settling, but if you build at a price point and you stick to that price point, you can deliver something very good. If halfway through the construction you go, you know what, I have a good idea, you should probably be taken outside, given a sedative, and allowed to sleep it off. As I say, yes, I'd love to have a funnel through my hangar. It'll keep us warm than operating the Arctic. We're going to operate in the Arctic, right? Trunking of funnels. I was shouting. Imagine if they managed to build 6 of them in single hangar 24 fighters only for escort duty. Just how different some battles would be if a battle group had 2 of them for protection from bombers. It would be really interesting. Because it would have suddenly made it a far more viable force. Because they would have been very useful. As it was, you ended up with a unstable issue. And you think about it, even if it isn't if it's only able to take 24 aircraft, it's still an extra flight deck with your battle group. It didn't float that well sometimes. Vision, this sounds a bit like the light monitor fiasco of the war, turning a proposed economy design into expensive and complex failure. Yes. Excellent. In other news, trying to do things on the cheap is a stupid idea. Agreed. Bombing maximum. With a deck edge lift, could it have stayed with a single hangar aircraft in low 30s? Let's see. They had 2 elevators. Forward one was 15.7 by 11 meters. Rear 10.8 meters by 8 meters. Basically, if you'd had 2 lifts and they were deck edge, you probably couldn't have got 30, but you might have been able to get to 28 aircraft. But it probably been functioning would have been 24. Interesting you mentioned Rangers, Shawmac. The designer had to be related to Clarkson. Well, it's not so much the designer. The designer comes up with a very sensible design. It's got, okay, it'll take 24 aircraft, has a nice island structure. What does debate whether it's going to be island or flush. I prefer to think of it as going to be island because I think that's more sensible. And it's going to have 24 aircraft. It would have been a very sensible ship. They could have built it. They could have got it into service. It would not have had the same trouble in typhoons as this one did. You know, there's an option. Ranger is not the Bearn, but that's because the Bearn is the Bearn of the U.S. Navy is something else. But Ranger comes awfully close. Hello, Carl. No, Wasp is not the Bearn of the U.S. then, because Wasp is not as bad as Ranger. However, we're going to starting on the USN now, and first of all, we have the Pensacola class. Now, these are scout cruisers. However, here is a small problem, because, you know when you want to make a scout cruiser. I love it, I love it, you love it, we all love a scout cruiser. It's always nice to have a reconnaissance information warfare asset in your fleet. And yes, we know, I'm not going to judge it because it gets renamed into a heavy cruiser later, because having 8-inch guns magically makes you a heavy cruiser. And so I'm not going to critique it for only having 2.5 inches to 4 inches of armour on its belt, and a deck of 1 to 1.7 inches, and turrets with 0.75 to 2.5 inches, and barbettes of 0.75 inches, and a conning tower of a 1.25 inch. All these things I'm not going to worry about. No. What I'm going to sit there and talk to you about is 32.5 knots. Okay? And top weight. Because here is the thing. If you want to make your ship very, very fast, what you do is you want to make it have a needle-like front. You want to make it narrow and come out. And so what you do is you think, right then, I want to make it fast. But you know what I also want to do? I want to have it have the most guns of any 8-inch cruiser. Yes, because it's a scout cruiser. It's not actually going to have to fight anyone. It's not its purpose. But it might do. And if it does, it's going to have the most guns. Oh, this is a good idea. Isn't it great? But how are we going to fit the 4 turrets in if we have them lined out like that? So, because, they will be, they'll be like that. How are we gonna? We can't get a triple turret forward. What we'll do is we're gonna put the heavy triple turret higher up on the ship than the twin turret, and that's how we're gonna get 10 guns. We're gonna have 2 triple turrets with all the maintenance requirements of a triple turret, and 2 twin turrets with all the maintenance requirements of a twin turret. Yeah! So we're going to have different turret types and all the maintenance logistics issues that comes with that. And we're going to put all the top weights higher up the ship, which is going to make it more unstable and going to make it a little more difficult to work. And it's going to be great because it'll have 10 guns and it'll be fast and have a really narrow bow. It's going to be great. You can just imagine the purpose. And look at this wonderful tripod mast. Look how tall it is. Isn't that exactly what you want on a ship which looks like that? Ugh. Simon, what's the single and simplest thing they could have done to improve the Bearn? Not go with 3 different types of lift. Just go pick one type of lift, make it as good as you can, and have 2 of them. John Funk, but there's a faction change around Euro's building. There is a bit of a weird thing going on in there. Nice one. Yeah, the 10-gun Saurian Tiger class more sane than Pensacola. Honestly, the Royal Navy was looking at various options, and I have a feeling that the county class, if they had built the Surreys, would have been 9-gun Surreys. I think they'd have gone for 3 triple turrets. They might. I don't think the Royal Navy was looking and didn't like the logistics idea of having different types of turrets. So it was either going to have to be 5 twins or 3 triples. They might have tried to sneak in 4 triples. But then you would have seen a Surrey class which were built and would have magically gained an armour belt before World War II. Because the only way the Royal Navy could have built 4 triple 8-inch guns, 8-inch gun counties, is if they'd had virtually no armour in peacetime. Would 5 double turrets have been a better approach? Honestly, 4 double turrets would have been fine. And that would have saved a lot of weight on the top weight. And could have allowed you to do other things with it. Thank you, Match Dostal. Yes, this video has allowed me to do many sarcastic rants. There are more coming. Listen, how does the experience of designing Nelson class affect the British decision to reject the 5 twin candy design? Honestly, I'm always surprised, and the Royal Navy was surprised, that their original idea for a York or county class seemed to be a York class, and we'll talk about that in a bit, possibly, was something which looked closer to a Nelson design, and that got rejected. The turrets look strange with how they seem to slope down towards the front. Yeah, they look like that. That's because of the flush deck and its angling. And some of the issues they have with the higher turret. Sure. You also had at least some tonnage to play with, so you could have just made the ship bigger to maintain the hull on. Yeah, that would have been good, because, let's be honest, this is built at 9,246 tons in standard, so you do have, theoretically, another 750 tons to play with. You could have built bigger. I guess that nicely heard from. And it just... Look, this was very nearly number 1. This was USN almost 1. This was very nearly number 1. But it wasn't number 1. And it wasn't number 1 because... well, this was also there. USS Ranger. Okay, let's get through this, right? So they want to build an aircraft carrier half the weight of a Lexington, less than that can carry the same A group as a Lexington. That's the important thing. And they do this by building the flight deck so lightly built, such a light superstructure above, that by the time they reach the late 1930s, early 1940s, it can't actually physically take some of the aircraft they're planning on flying off on their carriers. And by the end of World War II, it can't take them. They have to change it into a night fighter training ship, because it can just about take fighters. Originally, it's built without the ability to stow torpedoes, because who knew that was important for a carrier? Basically, Ranger is the carrier which is, officially according to the US Navy, too slow, but its official speed is 29 knots, to be served in the Pacific. The US Navy, Admiral King, this is the good barometer of the USS Ranger, right? In the middle of World War II, when the US Navy has lost carriers, when they are really suffering in the Pacific, he has a choice to ask the Royal Navy to borrow one of their carriers, or deploy the US Ranger to the Pacific. Admiral King, who hates getting the Royal Navy involved in anything because of Admiral Beatty and his opinion of him, which had been set in World War I, asks the Royal Navy for an aircraft carrier to come and help, rather than send this to the Pacific. Do you need to ask how bad this thing is if Admiral King, the man who would probably have preferred to crawl over molten glass stark naked than to actually make that request, made that request rather than send the Ranger to the Pacific? I know that's a little strong for this channel, but I honestly think I am underselling it of how much he would rather do anything than make that request. And yet he made that request. Knight said, Ranger was better suited in Atlantic. There are all sorts of things which go round, but let's be honest, none of it adds up. Until you realise this ship was a dog. An absolutely bad one as well. This is someone who loves dogs and they use that phrase, but come on. How bad does this ship have to be that King doesn't even consider it? He just goes straight and asks the Royal Navy for a carrier. Mm-hmm. Night 123. Could they use 7-inch? They could have used 7-inch guns, but they used 8-inch because that was what was the limit for everyone, so everyone must have had to build 8-inch guns. Calvin, I saw some shipbuilding models at IWM. Truly amazing things. Also found a very sad model on HMS Tenby whose turret fell off. Oh, that's terrible. They haven't repaired that yet. That's fun. Ranger, I see we've reached peacetime builds. A design's not built for peacetime, yeah. No, but I really want to hear someone try and justify the 6 folding funnels. I'm sure someone did, but let's be honest. They need to be you justify them by the thing of you either have to put trunking in the superstructure, which is not built for, so you'd have to build the superstructure actually stronger to take it, so you could get them to the island and get the funnels to go up there, or you have to build them folding, because otherwise they get in the way of aircraft operations. Yeah, I don't know why certain people bullying the Wasp so hard when this exists. I think they forget Ranger exists. I think they have an ability to forget the existence of Ranger. Every time I hear someone saying that Wasp is the worst carrier the US Navy ever produced, I sit there and go, Ranger. Ranger. And for definition of worst carrier, it's so bad King would rather ask the Royal Navy for help than send it to the Pacific. Jack Ray, at least the Ranger didn't have a tugboat assigned to make sure it could move around when it needed to, unlike some carriers. The Kuznetsov is not a high bar to set for a carrier, okay? If you're using the Kuznetsov as your bar, you need to get a new bar. I can't. No. The model of the HMS is a 10B is a scale model, custom made, and at the museum I work for, I recently found it and transferring it for repair. Ah, cool. So folding funnels versus whatever HMS Furious, Glorious, Courageous had coming outside. Furious had funnels out of her side. Glorious and Courageous both had funnel stacks going up the island structure. Furious had them coming out her sides as well. That's if you go to Ryuja and flush deck carriers, that's what they like Bearn, etc. They have the stacks out the side. That's what a flush deck carrier does. But you know, Bearn is shows you if you go back to Bearn, you can see the whole thing of the island structure. You can see the funnel going up. I think Illustrious was better for the job than Ranger. Nice to go friend. I agree an Illustrious Class A HMS Victorious is better for the job than Ranger. I do 100% agree. But I also say that in nicest way, if King could have done anything other than ask the Royal Navy for a carrier, he would have done. He would have done. Let's be honest. King would have done anything rather than ask the Royal Navy for a carrier. And yeah, so that's the sort of the reality of the Ranger. It just they were useful. They did their best in the Atlantic, and you have to remember the Atlantic was considered safer. Because let's be honest, the as far as the Axis navies go, and I know this goes against quite a lot of what's said in historical terms, but in reality, as the people at the time were analysing it, but rather than what modern pop history will tell you, sometimes it was not Kriegsmarine Japanese Ranger Marina. It was Kriegsmarine Ranger Marina IJN in terms of threat structure. They didn't even like the Ranger going anywhere near the Mediterranean. So she was fine for the, fine for her scenario then. And let's be honest, if we consider when she's with the US Navy, if Victorious hadn't been with the US Navy, she could well have been with Somerville in the Eastern Fleet, and he'd have had free carriers to oppose the Japanese, versus their free carriers to take on their 5 rather than 2. And who knows what could have happened under that scenario. So the thing is, it is a big thing for the Royal Navy to give them a carrier. They're not just going to give... it's a case which has to be made. It's not just a simple request, it's a justification. But King would not have made that case, would not have made that request unless he absolutely had to. Sure, Mac, Ranger was never really dead, mate. It was useful and did stuff unlike some other ships I can mention. Yes, which is why it's not the Bearn. It's not the Bearn of the US Navy. It's close. It made Admiral King have to say nice things to the Royal Navy. So for that, it's it's pretty close, but it's not the worst one. Hi, Steve. Drone UK, the comment about arm wrestling might be strong, but it's also entertaining. After all, this is YouTube. Yes. But it's also, it's actually me being kind of mild in my... There are some very interesting notes about the whole Victorious USS Robin episode, which Jamie on Armored Carriers gets into quite a lot. And has discussed quite a lot, done a lot of work on. And it's amazing the amount of requests and the amount of nice words King has to say. All words I can imagine. This is the same man, remember, who turned down any Royal Navy advice, any Royal Navy assistance on anti-submarine warfare, for whom basically here the Royal Navy Wrens, who were doing the coordinating things in Western Approaches Command, had to be pretending to be dating about a dozen American sailors at a time to be conducting briefings in pubs to try and help them work out how to deal with submarines and pass on the knowledge. Let's be honest, those poor Wrens deserved many medals for having to do with that. But the amount of hoops he makes his Navy go through to coordinate with the Royal Navy, and yet, on this one, he doesn't even consider for one moment sending Ranger to the Pacific. So, what is the Bearn equivalent of the US Navy? It's the Sims class. I'm sorry, I was quite surprised at this, but I'm approaching it from a different angle, but it does agree with actually Naval, and it was quite a funny thing that we did agree on it, because I wasn't expecting to agree. I've got the Royal Navy coming up after this. I wasn't expecting to agree with him on the Bearn, on the what is the most problematic class for the U.S. Navy in World War II, but it is the Sims class because they start off by trying to design the best destroyer they can possibly build, and basically they spend their entire time walking it back because they have managed to over-egg the pudding so much. They try and function in so many new ideas into one whole. They try and take such a giant leap forward, they manage to completely let me just check the phraseology. They managed to make themselves completely, as if they were attached to another plane by an inclined plane wrapped helically around an axis. I'm going to just repeat that all because I'm sure you can work out what I'm saying, but they managed to attach themselves to another plane by an inclined plane wrapped helically around an axis. Lionheart X-Ray, the Sims are always being picked on. Yes, there's a reason they're being picked on. Come on, what would have happened if we still had Glorious when King came a-knocking? Honestly, Glorious would probably have been in use somewhere. She might well have been sent out to the Eastern Fleet. She'd have been. Let's put it this way: if we still had Glorious in 1941, 42. In 1942, at that point, when they send Victorious out there, she would have probably been part of the Taranto operation. And if she'd been in the Mediterranean with Eagle, then Eagle would have been repaired, and so there would probably been Eagle, Illustrious, and the Glorious involved in Taranto. In which case, you probably have somewhere in the region of 72 Swordfish involved in the strike on Taranto. And if we consider the cumulative impact of 72 Swordfish being involved during that night strike, the probability is that the Italians would have had only, what, 1 to 2 battleships left serviceable, and they'd lost a whole lot of cruisers and other things as well at the same time. Combine that all in and all that loss of Taranto, that's going to have changed the Mediterranean. It's going to have changed the outcome of Crete and various other things, which would have mean that you would have had a very different Eastern fleet and all sorts of things. So the entire scenario probably changes. I think I've gone through that before of what happens if Glorious is still around and if Glorious and Courageous aren't lost. Sure, Mac. To be fair, most militaries need to learn hard lessons themselves. It's not uncommon. Yeah. I'm sure he would have tried to get Ark Royal if it was around. He would have liked Ark Royal. He would have been happy. Would have been happy with anything. Literally, he wanted anything. Sure, the Sims class are very bad. Again, my personal bugbear being the dual-purpose guns. I really have a bone to pick with Porters and Summers. Come, dear Lord, that could have changed the entire outlook of World War II in the maritime field. It would have. John Ark Royal would have probably been loved by the US as a lot closer to air carrier designs than 10 strike roll. Yeah. Its air grip mix and everything is far closer because of the strike. You see, you have to remember the USN designed air carriers around the strike roll. This is one of the interesting things people sort of they go, well, they call Ark Royal the British, sort of the American style or Japanese style, the Pacific style carrier, and it's not. It's just that the American and Japanese navies are building their carriers orientated around the strike roll. That's because they do alpha strikes. That's their doctrine. The British base theirs around the sort of the constant hitting roll. And so that leads to different evolution of carrier. And they have 3 types of carriers. They have the cruiser escort carrier idea. They have the fleet carrier, which is supposed to provide a protective group of fighters and a constant persistent strike on enemy forces in fleet actions. And then you have the strike carrier, whose role is to provide an on-call for the Admiral Alpha Strike to go boom, or to, you guys are hiding in harbour. Well, bye-bye, boom, I've come and I've hit you. That's the whole sort of scenario of them. And the American carriers are all built to do that sort of big boom, because that's how the Americans work in the Pacific. The British, when they're thinking about all-around operate on the world, go, well, yes, we love doing the Alpha Strike, and ideally we'd like a carrier which could do both, and have the armour, in which case we need a carrier which is roughly, well, as they soon build. It's basically called the Audacious class, which they built in World War II. Blackburn, Maximus, theoretically, under Washington Naval Treaty, submarines could have been built to 10,000 tons with 8-inch guns and large Surkoff. I suppose theoretically there's nothing stopping you. I'm out of iron brew. It's water time going out. By gum. The Sims class are, for me, are not don't rank up with the sort of the Sumners and the Porters, simply because the Sims class beat them. It's because the Sims and Porters weren't designed to be better and then fell back. They're not able to be Bearn because they're designed and they deliver on what they're designed for. Their design does not inhibit them from performing the role they were designed for. They just do it. Not very well, but they can still do it. Whereas the actual design the Sims were built for, which was supposed to be, in some regards, the equivalent of a tribal class, they just can't do. Well, it's one of the interesting discussions I was thinking about the other day, because there was the video about, and this comes up, is going to come, is mentioned in the Warspite video. Someone was recently asking, so what happens if HMS Ark Royal is in the western coast of America, or it's in Canada, getting refitted, and well, Warspite's in Western Canada getting refitted. And the thing is, by the time you get to 1942, the Royal Navy's incredibly short of capital ships, trying to find them all for the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and the Indian Ocean. And they're incredibly short of fast capital ships. They don't have them. So Victorious doesn't get an escort. She just goes out herself and gets folded into the American battle group. Whereas if you have it happen in 1941, and Ark Royal's there, well, Warspite's also there. So you could end up with Ark Royal and Warspite forming into the battle groups. This especially, the thing is, if she comes into availability after Coral Sea but before Midway, and they're able to get there to form part of the thing at Midway, you could have a British task group, sort of a British-led task group at Midway of Ark Royal, Warspite, and I'm not sure if any British destroyers would have got through. Probably have to be some American destroyers and American cruisers, but you don't know. They could have, the British might have rushed through a cruiser. Bonus! Mainly because I felt like going back and showing you that Bearnish scenarios happen earlier. We have Texas and Maine, which are built as the first battleship and first cruiser of the US Navy, in terms of the modern world. They are built as a response, and I do admit this, they are built as a response to the Brazilian Riachuelo. And here is the thing about the Brazilian vessel. It's an ironclad. It's lovely. But it scares the United States Navy with its 4 9.2-inch guns in 2 turrets. And it even scares Congress. Because her appearance shows them, apparently, like nothing else has, that they are not the most powerful navy in the Americas anymore. It's a rather sad time. So they authorized the construction of Texas and Maine. Texas was to be armed with 2 single 12-inch guns. Maine with 2 twin 10-inch guns. Not sure why they decided to give Texas such a small gunnery armament. I'm really not sure why, but they did. She also had, well, 4 casemated 30 caliber 6-inch guns, and yeah, 2 position 6-inch guns on Texas. These ships, honestly, the fact is the US Congress, at the same time as they wanted them, they actually managed to weaken them. And it was a good thing that they were a few years off before they ordered the Indiana class. And in fact, if we consider it, the Indiana class are laid down in 1891 and launched in 1893. Texas is laid down in 1889 and launched in 1892. So Texas takes 3 years to build. Thankfully, in that time, the US Navy decides what we're going to do is we're going to send some people off to learn how to design warships from the other navies in the world. And they do go and study it. They are the first major steel warships built in the US, all domestic materials. Well, basically, I would say both these ships have the similar problem as honestly, as the Graf Zeppelin, in that both of them their obsession is we must build this entirely with American skills and understanding and knowledge and resources. But I would have built twin ships modeled after the Imperious class with 4 times 10 inch. 2 armored cruisers. I can understand where you're coming from in that scenario, but the US Navy didn't get funding for that. They got funding for a battleship and an armored cruiser. I would say, though, that the class which comes next, Indiana, Massachusetts, and Oregon, are vastly better. Vastly better. If I can just find it. I have it somewhere. Where is my Oregon? There's my Oregon. Bum-ba-dum. Hello. Hidden away. So here's Oregon. She looks vastly prettier. Bless you. So, hello. I look like there used to be a character who was like this, wasn't he, on television? What was it? What was the program? Had Tim the Toolman Taylor in it, if I remember correctly. He was, he was always, "Hello, everyone," over the top of the thing. Anyway, I'm going to do it this way. Hello. So, as you can see, the development between this ship, which is a sort of, I would argue, ironclad-ish battleship made with it's off-center wing turrets and not really designed for broadside engagements and everything. And basically, this will be able to fire one 12-inch gun on each side. The theory that you can fire them cross-deck or anything, or can fire forward, etc., is just going to cause a lot of trouble. The same happens with the main. See this design which comes up. And this design is good. Because it learns from their construction experience, and it learns from what they managed to get from others, and it's got 13-inch guns. Yay! 13-inch guns. Why? Because the Royal Navy at this point really likes the 13.5-inch, and the US Navy is going after it. It's got 8-inch guns. Well, they're quite useful. It's got 4 6-inch guns. It's got 20 6-pounder, that's 57mm guns. And 6 18-inch torpedo tubes and 6 37mm guns. It's made of both Harvey. Its armor's comprised of both Harvey and nickel iron steel. And it's got an between 4 and 18-inch belt. It's got 15-inch armor on its main turrets, 17 inches armor on the barbettes of the main turrets. Secondary turrets have between 5 and 8 inches armor. The secondary barbettes have 8 inches of armor. The conning tower has 9 inches of armor. So, the jump from this to this is quite amazing. And quite cool. They had both 6-inch and 8-inch guns. But yeah, the lack of the 6-inch quick firing guns meant they wanted to go for a slightly bigger punch. And most of these ships had low freeboards at this time. Dr. Clarke, Wilson was the neighbour's name. Thank you, Just Funk. I was doing my Wilson impression. Home Improvement Show. Thank you. Yeah. Then we got RN class. So, first one, Didos. Didos. What can I say? Okay, the Dido class annoy me from several perspectives because they are basically a destroyer-built cruiser. In that they have guns crammed in them everywhere. And again, it's top weight issue. You want to stick in more guns? That's fine. Use a bigger, beamier hull. No? Oh, well, then you have top weight issue. Which we all predicted. Everyone could have predicted it. It is quite sad that Oregon wasn't preserved. The Didos are... It's one of those things. They are, at the same point, they are very effective, very nice ships. We like them in some regards because of the air defense they provide and the history and story they do and the crews that serve on them. But also, at the same time, they are a Bearn. Because Bearn does work. The Bearn can launch aircraft. So the Bearn can do its job in theory. But the thing is, in part of being designed to do its job, it's actually made its job more difficult. Because if these ships had been built around 4 turrets, and maybe they decided instead of having all 5.25-inch guns, or they'd just gone with the 5.25 inches on each end, and they'd used that extra weight for some 4-inch guns, they would have been a lot better. Once you try and cram more and more in your hull, and there are lessons for this in modern shipbuilding, when you see people overstuffing a hull, they are going to lead to 3 main issues. 1, it's going to have top weight issues. 2, you're going to have issues every time you want to upgrade anything, because you're going to have to take stuff out before you do, and you're going to have to negotiate what you put in around what's being left. And 3, and this is the most important issue really you've got for it, it's going to reduce your space for doing anything else. So if you're going to call this a cruiser, it needs to have space to be a cruiser. It needs to have space to do diplomacy and presence missions. Didos don't. If you're going to use it as an AA cruiser, great. Then you've got to balance it for an AA platform. What does an AA platform need to be? Does it need to be fast? To an extent, but doesn't need to be super fast. Not really. It needs to have good range. It needs to have stability for its guns to fire. It needs to be fast enough to cut through the water and keep up the task group, especially the carrier. It needs to be capable, though, of providing with air defense. So it's got a top speed of 32.25 knots, so it's fast enough to keep up the carrier. Can do 4,850 nautical miles at 11 knots. Fine. The Dido class, 487. The Bellona class, 530. The Dido class are basically designed with 5 twin 5.25-inch guns. The Bellonas are designed with 4. Why? Because once you take off that top weight, you suddenly get a lot better. The Didos carry 2 quadruple pom-poms, 40mm pom-pom AA guns. The Bellonas carry 3 quadruple pom-poms. The Didos carry 4 twin 0.5-inch machine guns. The Bellonas carry 6 twin 20mm Oricon AA guns. And both carry 2 triple 21-inch torpedo tubes. They carried Type 128 ASDIC and Type 279 early warning radar. All useful things, and they are very useful ships. But they are also, their own design gets in the way. Because, think about it, if you have the guns up that height, all the way up, and you're stacking up the guns, you need the beam to take the guns, to take the motion of the guns firing. Yes, you can use them. Yes, the maths wasn't bad enough they couldn't use them. But it's a problem. And as Knights of everyone, as I did in the chat, there is also the ability to produce enough 5.25-inch guns in sufficient numbers. Was a major problem for them. That was a major bottleneck. And yeah, 2,000 extra tons on displacement, you can properly armor it. They were, let's be honest, about between 5,600 and 5,800 tons in standard. That's right. Didn't the Knight 6831? Didn't the Admiral class battlecruiser suffer from all three of the issues you described? Pretty much, but well, let's put it this way. 3 of them aren't completed, and the one that is completed is constantly modified. It doesn't really have the same issues in top weight scenario, but does have quite a lot of problems. I mean, it's built for war. It absolutely doesn't need presence diplomacy mission. The trouble is, it's built as a cruiser for the Royal Navy, so it does need presence and diplomacy features, and it's not built just for war. If they are built between 1937, from 1937 onwards, you're not building them just for war. You have to build them into centers. When they're being designed, they're also part of the peacetime fleet and the peacetime duties. And they have a lot of options. Let's be honest, Didos could still shred most Italian cruisers. But that's because the Italian cruisers tended to have no armor. None at all. The Didos themselves, well, how do I put this politely? They had a 3-inch armoured belt, a 1-inch deck armour belt, 2 inches around the magazines, and 1-inch bulkheads. So, yeah. They had armour. Slightly better than their Italian counterparts, but not much better. I don't know, Alex, it's built in 3740. Does war come in iron? Knows it. It's much more feasible to build a war vessel than close to impending war than build it in 1926. Yeah, but Royal Navy's built based on war coming in 1942. That's what they've been held to. And even then, they're trying to deter conflict, and the presence mission is a good part of deterring conflict. So, in the nicest way, the RF fusers are built with peacetime stuff in them, and able to do it. And the RF fusers are just as war build emergency in many ways as the Didos. Knight 6831, no. The battlecruisers Renown, Repulse, and Hood do not get all of the presence diplomacy operations by a long way. It's nicest way, cruisers are going everywhere, including tribal-class destroyers are doing presence and diplomacy missions. And if you consider it, HMS Warspite is used for most of presence diplomacy missions in the Mediterranean. Hence, she goes to Turkey with Admiral Cunningham, and she takes some tribal-class destroyers with her. Because he turns around and looks at the options in his fleet and goes, if I want to maximise my diplomatic impact, those are the best vessels best suited with space and style. So, boom, there you guys go, off. And that's an important part of it. You know, instead of taking a cruiser with him, he takes the tribal class destroyers. Because they are able to do that mission. Because diplomacy and presence are as much a part of war. Diplomacy and presence are much a part of war as they are about peace, and especially about shaping the war that's going to come. I'm trying to know, maybe an 8,000-ton Super Dido would have. Honestly, if you consider that they're at full load, they're nearly 7,000 tons. So at full load, Didos are nearly 7,000, nearly 7,000 tons. I'd say a Dido which was probably about, you probably even wouldn't need a 2,000 extra tons. You could probably have functioning enough beam and enough length to A, make us stable with all five twin guns on, and B, increase the space so you could actually do the entertaining and diplomacy missions for about 1,000 tons. John South, when I was in the RM, we did presence missions in 20 millimeter long patrol boats, so they're getting other places. Exactly. Blackman Maximus, wouldn't it have been better to design a semi-auto-loading anti-air 6-inch 2-gun turrets? They were designing them, it's just they didn't actually arrive till you got the Tiger class after World War II. It took a long time to develop them. I too. One solution for the 5.25-inch gun shortage is to ditch those guns on the King George V's and use 4.5s there instead. It improves the King George V's, then use the freed up guns on the Didos. That would have been sensible. And could have actually sped up the KGV's construction. That's right, so battlecruisers are overkill in some cases. Yeah. You adjust the presence. Just as I said, now as I've been over before on the deterrence mission, all sorts of things, you adjust the presence. The presence is proportional. So sometimes it's proportional to send a small destroyer in this period, or a frigate today, or an OPV. Sometimes it's proportional to send a larger escort. Sometimes you send a carrier battle group. Sometimes you send a Marines amphibious group. Next one, K-class submarines. Okay, I don't think I need to overstate this, but here's what happens. Someone gets the idea of building a cruiser submarine that can cruise with a fleet and provide the fleet with a submarine capability. And they get so obsessed with it, they decide actually putting steam engines on a submarine is a good idea. I'm not sure how that happened, but someone actually thought that was a good idea. And you know what's worse? The only sane person in the room saying no was Jackie Fisher. Jellicoe was saying yes. Beatty was saying yes, God yes. And Fisher is going no. Even Keyes, who was in charge of submarine design, was going yes. Alex, okay, this one is fair. Yeah. I wonder if you could use the Leander hull as a good base for Super Dido. Well, that was the thing I was thinking. Instead of using the Aerofuser hull, use the Leander hull, and you could probably get a far better Dido. By showing different types of presence, you show that you have many different capabilities and can do all sorts of nasty things that you can't hide. That's another reason why helicopters on escorts are quite so useful, because again, it's quite often you can make 8-person squad of Marines with 4 sailors dropping in all over the place from a helicopter going, hello, we're here to drop off some water and be friendly with everyone, and you can turn up all over the place and scare the bejesus out of the government. Alex Hunt, the only sane person in the room was Jackie Fisher. Ye gods. Yep. But it's not even attempting really to do an SSN. It's attempting to do... Oh, good lord. How do I put this politely? It's attempting to do the impossible decades early. I just wonder what the noise was coming from my my fridge, and it's in a defrost cycle. Steam engines only work in Atlantis, the Lost Empire. Steam engine submarines only work in Atlantis, the Lost Empire. That's slightly worrying. Cinema, would you consider the M1 submarine to be Bearn-like? Oh, it was on the list, but again, it's the top 3. And I haven't got to the Bearn yet of the Royal Navy. I know what the Bearn is of the Royal Navy, but I haven't yet got to it. You can also give dignitaries nice rides in a helicopter. Yep. Well, isn't there that scene in one of the books of Game of Thrones universe where I think it's Maegor the Conqueror's wife comes and takes the young son of one of the kings for a ride on her dragon. Just drops in at night onto the top of the keep, takes the son for a ride, shows him how beautiful the world is, and scares the bejesus out of the father. So the father decides that he's going to surrender to them, because they have dragons. Longbow, apologies, but I have an inherent bias to class interest. How far on a Bearn scale sits the Omaha class? The Omaha class cruiser got into top 10, just fended off top 5 on the Bearn scale. Got to number 6. Not that bad, really. Because basically, they're an American response to the C-class cruiser. And so basically, you take a British C-class cruiser, you add a lot of guns to it, and you get an American response to it. Thank you, Jack Ray. Couldn't mine lane tubes of submarines have been fitted to launch rockets, potentially for mass night rocket attacks on shore targets? Not really. Because they weren't really designed for that scenario, and then you've got a rocket going off inside the pressure hull for some of the mine laying tubes. And that's not good. No, Steve, you were close. You were close, but no. The Royal Navy's Bearn. The Royal Navy's Bearn is the York class. Okay, so here is the thing. You design the cruiser to be cheap, it ends up more expensive. You design it to be produced in greater numbers, you produce fewer of them. You design it to be more capable, it ends up slower and with less guns. You do all this when at the same time you have sitting in front of you. Sitting in front of you, let me just make sure I have the right picture queued up because I put that other picture in there earlier, so I didn't have that picture queued up anymore. Yeah. That'll do. Yes. So it should come up. Come on. You have sitting in front of you the whole time. Where's the design? No, wrong one. Wrong one. Ugh. This. So, You have sitting there the whole time this design. You have the nail rod design. These are basically efficient ships. These are what you design when you've got a limitation on treaty reasons. They're designed to be the most efficient possible. What do? You go for them. If you think about that, imagine if you take a county class and you go, right then, I'm going to design it with 3 triple 8-inch turrets. And you can do this on UAD, and you'll find you can do it. All forward. I want to have a speed of roughly 28-30 knots. Because, let's be honest, that is what... The Yorks theoretically did 32.25 knots. So if you want to give them the speed of 32.25 knots, you can do. And then you want to stick the 4-inch guns aft. Stick 2 pairs of them aft. But, actually no, be nice. Stick 8 of them in aft. So 8 4-inch guns, 4 pairs aft. You will find you can get a very decent cruiser for the roughly 8.25 thousand tons standard, 10,000 tons fully loaded. You can get a very nice cruiser for that capability. It's in front of them the whole time, and yet they try to reinvent the wheel and they break it. Oh, it is the same as Drac again. Are we in collusion? No, we're not in collusion. It's just one of those things. We now spend, if you think about the amount of time, and we're going to be talking again, we talk to each other most weeks for bilge pumps. We talk to each other most weeks for ship shape. We talk to each other because occasionally we have questions for each other on naval history stuff. And yes, we work together now so often that we are starting to occasionally think alike. And we're about to spend a month together in Australia, so... that's just going to get worse. Well, if we keep doing this every year, and they keep doing ship-shape trips every year, we're probably going to end up with a point going, did you think that? Did I think that? When which one of us came up with that idea? Yes, he did a video on the worst ships of the 1930s. But to be fair, I've been calling these cut-price counties for a long time. You can go back to my cruiser video from last year on the York class, and I basically hammered them for 45 minutes. I always thought it was crazy RN didn't build a Nelrod cruiser. Not only would it have worked on a bad day, it would have looked like a Nelrod and had a lot of fear factor. That is the exact thing. If you look at the tribal class, if you look at the county class, they're all designed to look like, potentially like battleships from a distance. But they didn't build anything to look like these from a distance. Bill Johnson Spotify, no. I don't know. We release it on we release it on Simplecast, and I'm not sure where it goes from there. I think it does go out on iTunes, and I think it might go on Spotify, but I'm not sure. Longbow. What? Wait. Did you tell all Ford York? Did you tell a war game about it for Nottingham? I think I've mentioned it on a few videos of theirs over the years. Because occasionally I do think I still occasionally, and we are supposed to do another Armchair Admirals at some point soon. Richards, yes, I know, but Exeter did mark Graf Spey up. Yes, she did, but well, I haven't told you which ships are in my German collection yet. You'll find that out on Saturday. Are you coming to fight camp? When is fight camp? Because it would depend if I was free. But Drac has talked about on occasion. But I'm not sure if I am or not. It depends on when it is. It depends if I'm teaching, basically. Have you thought about putting your videos up on Spotify? Not really. I'm not really sure how you do that. But seriously, the RN, they could have just built Naval-style cruisers. August. It depends when it is, because there are 2 weeks in August when I'm teaching. I'm course directing for Justin Craig. I'm running summer school again this year. Don't worry, there'll be a whole load of key ship series videos for you all to watch. Oh, I'm definitely teaching 4th to 6th of August. I'm course directing. I'm boss. Because it's literally, I'm in the 1st week and the 3rd week of August. I get to be course director for the setup of the centre and course director for the packing up of the centre. And I'm not sure who gets to be course director in the middle, but probably someone else. So, there you go. That was the major navies. And as said, on Saturday, the Long Patrol comes out, and I will have the German vessels in. Yeah, but, you know, and give her more torpedo tubes a la T-class. That could have been fun. During penetrating, counties with 3 triples in conventional or narrow layout would have been incredibly potent ships. They would have been. Blackburn Maximus, would it have been possible to do a 4 triple 8-inch cruise on a Tony class layout under 10k tons with 6 inches armour? Probably not, but not much of it. I never worry about lack of content from the Doctor. You produce far more than I consume. I try. And here is the bonus. The bonus. The King George V class. The Royal Navy going, you know what? Actually, the French might have been onto something with that battleship design. That one. The Corvair class. Because, you know, that number of guns would be a good idea. The same Navy which a few years ago had built this, then decides to turn around and build that. And you sit there and go, but, okay, fine. But why didn't you go triple 16-inch guns? Well, because we're going quadruple 14-inch, but you can't in the weight. You can go triple 16-inch. You've proved that and done it before. But you can't go quadruple 14-inch and 12 of those. So you're ending up with 10 guns. Is 10 14-inch guns the same broadside as 9 16-inch guns? No, it's not. 12 sort of is. 10? No. And also, those are quadruple turrets. And remember what I said about quadruple turrets. 1 gun in a turret is 1x problems. 2 is 2x problems. 3 is 4x problems. 8 is 8 times x problems. Yay! Goodness gracious me. In Hearts of Iron against all odds, Canada buys 3 York claws. How would the British convince them to buy 3? I'm not sure. Holding a gun to their head at the same time as offering them a sweet? There is no way you could convince me to buy 1 York class, let alone 3. Would the Yorks be better with 6.6 instead of 8 Then they'd be crown colonies. Alex, in real life, Drac was quite kind to the Königsbergs. If you go and look at the video I've done on the Königsbergs, you'll notice I'm never kind about the Königsbergs. But seriously, you could have just reused the Nelson turrets and you could have made a triple 15-inch guns, and then you could have upgraded the Queen Elizabeth class and the Hood and Rodney and Hood and Renown and Repulse with better 15-inch guns. There are so many options. Why go for a 14-inch? Now, the reason that you'll not always be told is literally it was made as a political decision. They were hoping that if they went 14-inch, they'd inspire everyone else to go 14-inch. The trouble is, there is a small problem with this. At the same time as they're doing this, they A, know Japan has left the treaty system, and B, know that Japan is building something with probably 17.5-inch guns or bigger. 17... So... in what world do you think building a 14-inch gun battleship is going to entice the Japanese to drop their gun size down by nearly 4 inches? It's not. They're not. It's just... no. The 9 15-inch gun was probably the most rounded design variant. Yes, it probably was. Because if you think about it, if they'd gone with the 15-inch guns in triple turrets, you probably wouldn't have had the problems of HMS Prince of Wales at the Battle of Denmark Straits, which might have changed the outcome completely. Because instead of having 2 working guns, she'd have had 10 working guns for most of the battle. Well, she'd have 9. Instead of having 2 working guns for most of the battle, she'd have had 9 working guns for the whole battle, and that would have changed things dramatically. Hello, Melanie. Alexander, counterpoint. The King George V. The thing is, they are good ships in every single part, which is why they are not the Bearn, and they didn't make it into the top 3 of the Royal Navy, apart from the guns. Pretty much every other category of the King George V's, you're sitting there going, you are good. They're able to do 28 knots. That is fine for a battleship at this period. They are able to. Have a range of 15,600 nautical miles at 10 knots. Whew, that's good. That is good. They carry decent radars. They've got 8 twin 5.25-inch guns. Okay, they could be 4.5-inch guns, but they're still good. They're still fine as they are. They could maybe have carried 10. They could have carried 10 twin 4.5s, but they've got 8 twin 5.25s, and that's fine. They've got a main belt which is 14.7 inches thick. They have a lower belt of 5.4 inches thick. Their deck is between 4.88 and 5.88 inches thick, i.e. 124 to 149 millimeters. Their gun turrets are 12.75 inches thick in armour. Their barbettes are 12.75 inches thick. They have a double-ended catapult, and they carry 4 Supermarine Walrus seaplanes. They displace 36,000 tons in standard in their wartime. 37,000 tons in standard in their wartime configuration when they're finally completed. These are not bad ships. What is bad about them is some moron, Chatfield, decided that the 14-inch gun, he would listen to the politicians and he would insist on 14-inch guns being used for the battleships. And he would prank everything on rate of fire of having 12 14-inch guns. And then they only get 10 because of top weight issues, because that means you can't have the third quadruple turret, and that's why you have a twin turret. And then you can't fit in an extra twin turret because that would take you over the weight limit, so you can't go up to 12 guns still. And you've got 14-inch guns. Alexander, you're correct, but I'm still outraged at your hubris. Nah. Bearn, were those 2 working guns on the pit as well as the twin turret? Mm-hmm. 1970, when were Yamato being built? The British get the first intelligence about Yamato about 1930. Well, they have strong suspicions they hear about the planning of Yamato. Because remember, the British have they have a lot of spies in Japan. And it's a sort of compromise network, but it's a fairly efficient network. And they first hear about plans in 1936, and they hear she's being built in 1937. And basically, you can go... They hear what the Japanese are working on, and they think, from about 1935-36 onwards, they think the Japanese are working on a 17.5-inch gun. I have no idea why the British take the idea of the Japanese working on a 17.5-inch gun. Because let's be honest, the Japanese have been working on 18-inch guns since World War I. So why you think they've suddenly dropped down to 17.5-inch, I do not know, but they do. And so they think they're working on a 17.5-inch gun. They think that's next to the battleships are going to be 17.5-inch. And the thing is, the King George V's, yes, when they're originally designed, and they're originally going to be built, that is designed to take a quadruple 14-inch gun mounted up it. It's not, because in the end they can't, but it's what it's designed for. So they could have switched out the turrets for a triple 15-inch or even a triple 16-inch, and fit in the same space as the ring for the quadruple 14-inch. The quad turrets didn't work because of the complexity. You literally have so many guns in them, that's the issue. It's a case of, they don't work, but you have, in a single gun turret, you have 1x problems, things which can go wrong. Twin gun turrets, 2x. 3 guns, 4x. 4 guns, 8x. Times many things can go wrong. And the trouble is, you have to set it up right to keep them all going, and you have to be used to their maintenance, and it takes time to get those things ready. And you're not going to get them ready in the wartime conditions. And yes, they can say they start building in 1937. They don't. They think war's coming in 1942. In the nicest way, why are you going straight with a weird design? Stick with a triple turret. Engaging strategy. I've walked in on Alex ranting about King George V. I'm like, yes. French went 15-inch. Germans went 15-inch. RN should have done 2. Yes. Blackman, wouldn't it have been better to threaten the drop treaties as Crash Bin and K-Freeze when Japan dropped out? Oh, if the industry had been left and there, and if the rationalisation of the 1930s pushed through by Neville Chamberlain as Chancellor hadn't happened, it might have been possible. Weren't there logistic reasoning for behind the 14-inch shell weight size? Also didn't... Well, that's not really that was sometimes put out by people as going, it's easier to move 14-inch shells. The trouble is there's stockpiles of 15-inch shells all around the world. So that's one of the problems with that. If you go, right, and it's easier to move 14-inch shells around the world. Yes, it is. But you also need to build them from scratch, whereas you've got stockpiles of 15-inch shells. You're still producing 15-inch shells because you've got lots of 15-inch ships. And you've got 15-inch stockpiles around the world. Basically, you've gone from having 15-inch and 16-inch to having 15-inch, 14-inch, and 16-inch. So logistically, you've actually just made your life a lot more difficult. So everyone who goes, well, it's easier to move 14-inch shells around the world. You sit there and go, yes, but you've already got 15-inch shells all around the world. You're already moving 15-inch shells around the world. You're supporting that. You're adding in another gun type you have to support. You're making your life more complicated. Instead of loading a ship up just with, what, a 15-inch, or just with 15-inch, or maybe just with 16-inch, you're loading it up with 14-inch, 15-inch, and 16-inch. That's just not sensible. And that's just the shell run to Gibraltar. Sorry, rant coming on. 14-inch shells are not that much cheaper, and they're not that much smaller, and they don't need that much. They do need almost as much materials to produce. They're really not that much different from 15-inch shells to justify them. When you're ordering that to scale, you're ordering them for king and country. What about the 13.5-inch too? Oh, don't get me started. They were technically ones for Tiger, and Tiger had technically ceased to be part of the Navy at that point. So it wasn't just that about the design, it was teething issues. It was constant teething issues for most of World War II in the quadruple turrets. So we had 3 battleship calibers, 3 cruiser calibers, 6-inch, 5.25-inch, and 7.5-inch. Hang on now. 6-inch, 5.25-inch, 8-inch, and 7.5-inch Hawkins class. So we had 4 cruiser calibers, 3 battleship calibers. 4 if you include the 13.5-inch shells we still had sitting around from Tiger. Destroyer types, well, we had the 4.7-inch, 2 different forms of 4.7-inch. We had the 4.5-inch, we had the 4-inch. And so we had 4 of those. I was going for politician reasons. Perhaps it would have been helpful. No. The politician reasons. In the nicest way, that's the point at which Chatfield should have responded back, "You're being a moron," to them. And that's the strongest word I will use on here. Concussion and recoil of 14 inches still enough to break something in a gun turret. It is. It is. Gosman, couldn't you use the US supplies to help out? With 14 inches they used it. No. Because the 14 inch the shaping of the gun, the whole thing was not set in a way that there would be commonality between the shells. Let's put it this way. Logistical nightmare as well. Yes. So in nicest way, they were just making everything more difficult. There is no point in it. And without much further ado, I'm going to say final questions. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'm going to then go and have a comfort break. And then I will be back on... I will turn up on Discord in a bit and in the general chat. If anyone's got any questions about tonight, anything they want to chat about, and if anyone's got any things they want to ask about Australia and all those things, I'll be on Discord for the next half an hour or so. John South, how much were the Yaran logistics taking when they saw different types of shell logistics and didn't freak out? I think they weren't on what you're suggesting. I think they were on sedatives. Definitely sedatives. Thank you, John Shea. Thank you, Mark Harkness. Thank you, Jack Ray. Thank you, DJ40 at Lombo. Engaged only. Given the 15-inch battleships and battlecruisers were the background of the RM battle line in the war period, why was 14-inch pushed for in Washington Naval Treaty? Was it to hobble the others? It wasn't pushed for in the Washington Naval Treaty. It was pushed for... the idea was that it would make everyone have to restart their building program, but they used 16 inches to the limit. And then the Royal Navy were trying to push 14-inch in the Second London Treaty and failed. And that's the thing. The Second London Treaty fails in 1937 and everyone knows it. And they're still trying to build a 14-inch gun battleship. Thank you, Longbow. I'm glad you enjoyed catching live. I too question. If some black magic the Iron managed to make a working autoloading 5.25 twin mount, would a super destroyer based around the mount on a tribal derived hull make different sense? Yes, that would probably be what the Daring class would have ended up looking like. Take care, Calvin Gaswood. Thank you, History Vanguard. Black Maximus. Make a July suggested question for voting. Should be what if the British started investing in infrastructure across the empire after the Great Depression hit. Oh, that'd been fun. Duke mentioned Anglo-Franco joint 15-inch gun. It might work. Honestly, I need to look that one up. Thank you, Bishon. Thank you, Steve Richards. Thank you, Gosman the 13. Thank you, Much Dossel. And thank you, Alex Hunt. And thank you, everyone. Take care, and thank you very much again for all your support. We have another Brew Ships on Sunday, then we have a Patron next Thursday, then we have Brew Ships again, then we have Gun for Illusions, Useful Idiot or Misunderstood Leadership. I thought you might enjoy that one. Brew Ships 114 on 28th of May, and then last live before I go to Australia is the 1st of June's glorious 1st of June. And I will say this, the Gun for Illusions one might move, it might not. It depends on when the conference I'm at that day finishes. Thank you, Engaging Strategy. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Alex Hunt. Run on. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, everyone, for being super chats. Thank you, Jack Ray, for all the memberships. And thank you, everyone. Take care. And as said, I'll be heading straight to, well, after a comfort break, to the Discord server.